Well, we're at 5:31. Let's call our meeting to order. Welcome to the City of Gainesville Virtual GCRA Advisory Board meeting. Hopefully this is the last time we need to say virtual with that. It's Tuesday, October 20th, 2020, and we have 4 items on the agenda tonight. If we could get a roll call vote and make sure we have an official quorum.
Okay. Lena Braben.
Present.
Jason Atkins Tufts. Holly Blount. Carrie Bush.
Here.
Linda Dixon.
Present.
Evelyn Fox.
Here.
Armando Grandi Gomez.
Present.
Jacob Eide. Christopher Merritt. Jason Mitchell.
Present.
Lauren Nielsen.
Here.
Michael Palmer.
Present.
Chair Pollitt.
Present.
Stephanie Seawright. And Jessica Turner Evans.
Present.
So we're good to go. Thank you. Before we adopt the agenda, we've had a request to move the communications part to the end of the meeting. So if no one objects to that, and I could get a motion to adopt the agenda moving as amended, then second. Oh, Mr. Nielsen.
So that was.
I have a question. Hold on, I got a question. Warren's got a question.
Yeah, I just want to fit right into the agenda. I have a couple of suggestions that I want to put on the table for the pleasure of the board. And it's not very long, but I just wondered what time there would be opportunity if I could do that as a member. I won't take long.
I don't even see board member comment on here.
Can you be more specific?
I see it at the very end.
Okay. Very end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's member comment. Well, yeah, it's we already got a section on member comment. We'll do
Mr. Chair,
that.
can we approve the agenda with the modifications of adding member comment to the end?
We have it. Member comments is already on the agenda at the end. We're asking to move the communications to the end of the agenda. So if I have a motion and then a second.
So moved.
Second, Evelyn Fox.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
I guess we have to roll call this. Is that true?
Is anybody opposed?
That's a good question. All right. We'll move
That's
on.
better.
We have 2 groups of minutes that we need to approve. I guess we should do these individually in case that somebody wants to change something. So the first one is the minutes for the October 19th, 2020 Advisory Board meeting. If I could get a motion to approve.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Did you say October 19th or September 19th?
Sorry, August 19th. And then the
Okay.
second one will be September 15th. But right now it's August 19th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Get a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Are there any objections? Hearing none, passed. September 15th, 2020, Joint GCRA Advisory Board Commission meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objection to approval?
The
All right.
second, if I may ask.
Pardon?
Second the motion. Second the motion for the second set of minutes.
Oh, that was that member Bush who seconded?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Rocky, I can't,
Thank you.
David, you've got a scratch in your audio. I can't hear you too well. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, we'll move forward then. Communications has been moved to the end. Our first item of new business is a community land trust discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, board members. I gave a handout prior to this. I'm going to share my screen and go over this presentation. Can everyone see the first slide that says Community Land Trust?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. A little bit about the organization that I represent. We are Grounded Solutions Network. We are a national membership-based nonprofit organization that works very hard to look at lasting affordability housing models. The two that we specialize in are community land trust and inclusionary housing policies. We work coast to coast, and we really want to work with cities, communities, so that there's lasting affordability around housing that lasts for generations to come. A little bit about myself. My name is Jason Webb. I serve as the Senior Community and Capacity Building Specialist here at Grounded Solutions. Come to this work with over 30 years of experience in community land trust work. Specifically, I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. For a number of years, I ran Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative and Dudley Neighbors Incorporated. I started this work very young in my own community in Boston, Massachusetts. And specifically here at Grounded Solutions, I work a lot with groups that are thinking about this model to implement. So a lot of startup community land trust I primarily work with. A little bit of a short sort of history of the roots of the community land trust to ground us all in. Our roots of the community land trust are as complex and as sort of interwoven to a number of different movements that have happened here in the U.S. So there are sort of elements of inside the community land trust model that come from the U.S. peace movement, the single tax movement, and also the civil rights movement.
Jason, hold on one second. Evelyn,
Yes.
Can you mute your phone, please?
Cool. Very, very early on, and the CLT sort of model actually stems out of a 1968 trip of a delegation of a number of individuals that were looking at a new model of land ownership specifically for the American South. This delegation was impressed by the Mushan model, which combined individual homesteads with, cooperative farming on leased land. And some of the individuals that accompanied this delegation were, Slater King, Maureen King, Bob Swan, and Faye Bant. Now, as this delegation came back, there was actually a larger working group that came together to really start to draft a blueprint around a new model of land tenure. We all know that land very early on in the conception of our country was sort of power. And a number of folks that sort of owned a lot of land held a lot of power. And as the civil rights movement was continuing to move forward, and as we were thinking about a new way of land and power, and how can we make the individuals that was the African-American community coming out of the civil rights movement, how can we make sure that they are on somewhat of an equal footing, something that we continue to try to strive for even today. as you can see from this slide, a number of different individuals came together to really start to think about this land ownership, this land tenureship. And coming out of the delegation, and they really thought about this from a cooperative standpoint, from a collective standpoint of land ownership. And what came out of this was actually the first community land trust, which is known as New Communities Incorporated. New Communities, Inc. Was established, and just last year we were privileged enough to celebrate its 50th anniversary. And one of the things that continue to come out of this model of land ownership is one that a community land trust is about the community collectively owning this land, safeguarding it, protecting it, and really also leveraging it to make sure that things can stay affordable, not for the generation that's actually living in it, but for multiple generations to come. Currently, right now, there are over 225 community land trusts throughout the country. There was a rapid growth of community land trusts in the 1990s, and now that we see that a lot of communities are looking towards how can we bring more affordable housing, and not just more affordable housing that could be affordable for 5, 10, 15, or even 30 years, but how can we make sure that this affordable housing stays affordable forever? As what I talked about, the motto itself does definitely have a lot of its roots inside the civil rights movement. And right now, CLTs are in 41 states plus DC and in Puerto Rico. Now, just some of the basics of a community land trust. So by its nature, a community land trust acquires, owns, and stewards land in this permanent state. And it's in this permanent state for the common good by providing affordable housing, commercial spaces, community spaces, farms, and even open space. One of the things I like to say with the community land trust, anything you can do with real estate, you can go ahead and do it on a community land trust. Now, the classic community land trust model is defined as a nonprofit organization that has a defined service area, that has a corporate membership, and has what's called a tripartite board of directors. And this tripartite board of directors really tries to balance some of the interest in this entity and in this model. So one is you have the general community, because we know that these models are implemented not in vacuums, but they're implemented in existing communities. So you have some community members that sit on the board. You have what's called the leaseholders, the folks that are actually living on the land that is being leased to them. Primarily homeowners, but can also be renters, small businesses, and even all the way down to farmers. And then you have another third of the board that is set aside for public stakeholders. I always like to say that the two-thirds of the board in the community members and the leaseholders are elected by the membership. And once those board members are brought in, then they look at who else are the stakeholders that can help the community land trust succeed and can be brought onto the board of directors. The dual ownership that makes up the community land trust is very unique when it comes to home ownership, where the individual owns the home, the community land trust owns the land. This was also borrowed from a lot of commercial deals, because this is how a lot of commercial developments are done, where you have this dual ownership where somebody owns the improvements and somebody actually owns the land underneath. And what brings it all together is a ground lease. We have been blessed to be shepherds of a model ground lease that has been used by all community land trusts, We've also been able to leverage on a federal level to have both of the major enterprises of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae embrace this model ground lease. But this is the legal agreement that ties these two pieces together. And when we talk about permanent affordability, we really come up with this sort of formula. We lower the price initially. We keep the price lowered at resale by really controlling the appreciation that a homeowner can take away from that property. And we can do this again and again and again. And currently right now, we have homeowners that have been living on CLT homes for 30 years that we can, confidently say that prior to them purchasing the home, when they're ready to sell the home, it's going to stay affordable. And we know that that transaction can keep going on. But to ground us, I always like to go through just some quick numbers. When we talk about sort of the affordability gap, it's the difference between what the market will bear and what a family can afford. So in this quick exercise, the affordability gap is roughly about $45,000. Now, we all know that over time, the affordability gaps in certain communities and in certain cities have just grown over time. As the market price continues to go up, the affordability price can never actually keep within inside of a respectable margin. And as the years go on, we've just seen affordability just continue to be more and more getting out of hand for a number of homeowners. It's far out of their reach at this point compared to a number of years ago. Now, with this community land trust model, we are definitely trying to strike a fine balance and also a fair balance. We know that we want individual wealth creation, but we know that we're also trying to balance that with community affordability. We're also trying to balance the fact that being a part of real estate, there are definitely some risk with balancing some of the rewards that do come from homeownership. We know that when we're thinking about asset building and wealth creation, that there is a spectrum of different strategies that can be deployed. On one side, you have the asset building, and that is sort of the subsidy forgiveness strategy that a number of cities will sort of deploy. Most cities will say, we're going to help you with a down payment assistance grant, and we're going to give you $25,000. And the only thing you need to do is stay in the home for 5 years, and then after 5 years, you don't have to repay back that $25,000. That's what's commonly known as subsidy forgiveness, where you're giving somebody a leg up by giving them resources and then giving them a very short amount of time and then forgiving them. Where we talk more about is what's called subsidy retention, where that $25,000 gets retained in the property. And what is given out to the next homeowner is the idea of a fair balance of giving out some of the appreciation, but not all the appreciation that the property has gained over the number of years that that person's lived in the home. We'll go over a quick example. Now, the traditional model, as what I talked about previously, you have the $200,000 home. Our family can afford $155,000. The subsidy needed, which is only $45,000. 10 years later, the home can be actually, sold for $240,000 because that's what the market will bear. Now, remember, our $45,000 only had a 5-year cap on it, or even a 10-year cap. What would need to happen is that homeowner would be walking away with $85,000. They would also with inside that $85,000 is the fact that they're also walking away with that initial $45,000 that we put into that home to make it initially affordable. Now let's take a look at this next homeowner that we're trying to sell this home to. The new sale price of the home, as what we talked about, is $240,000 because that's what the market will bear. Our down payment assistance grant, basically became forgiven. The new buyer could only afford $185,000. Now, if we wanted to try to help this next buyer to get into the home, we would have to come up with $55,000 new dollars to make this home affordable again. Now, a lot of folks would say, wait a minute, that's crazy. But unfortunately, this is what happens every single day because we've had policies put in place where some of the initial subsidy that was put in to help that homeowner get into the home is not retained but is forgiven. Under the community land trust model, we look at it very different. We still are working with the same buyer, but instead of selling them the home for $200,000, we're actually going to sell them the home for $155,000 because that's what they can afford. That's the mortgage in which they're going to take out. This $45,000 is what's going to go and either pay down the construction cost or some of the other cost of making the home in the beginning. 10 years go by, the market is still the market, it's $240,000, but the sale price we've capped at $185,000. Now, the CLT will retain $55,000 and the seller will walk away with $30,000. That's the appreciation, and that's, they'll also get any sort of difference with inside of the mortgage principal pay down that they've done. But $30,000 is what we would consider to be fair to allow for the next buyer to go ahead and come into this home with not putting any new money on the table. Because again, we've kept that $55,000. We've made it so that the sale price of the home can roughly be in the ballpark of what the next buyer can afford. And we know that we can do this again and again and again through what's called resale formulas, where we can actually map out where the market is going to go and where the affordability can go over the next 5 to 10 years. One of the things that we always talk about when we talk about a community land trust is our ground lease is a 99-year ground lease. So when we talk about these things being permanent, we actually put it in the legal document that we're going to lease this land for as long as that person actually wants to live in that home. But one of the things that also comes with that is the responsibility of these three areas. One is that we're stewarding the structures because we want to make sure that as we build or as we rehab these structures, that they are going to last for as long as possible. We're stewarding the leaseholders because again, we want to make sure that we are the developer that never leaves. So we are the ones that the homeowner can always turn to if they have questions, if they run into financial difficulties. The community land trust is there, and a number of community land trusts have programs to support those homeowners in getting out of those sticky situations. And then most importantly, I would say, is the public funds of the subsidy that's put into these properties is also what the community land trust is stewarding. Because we all know that that money, especially with inside budgets, with inside cities, are, a valuable commodity. And we know that this commodity is being shrunk every year. And we know that when a city goes ahead and actually invest in affordable housing, we want to make sure that it's not there for one homeowner, but it's there for multiple homeowners to come. And with that, what are your questions?
Thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions from the board? I see a couple of hands up. I'm just going to start from upper left. Mr. Blount?
Thank you. He mentioned, the presenter mentioned 5 years to run out the assistance, that otherwise it would be prorated payback in less than 5 years. I think that's short. I would think it should be 10 years or more, because this is not just about helping the individual households, but it's about neighborhood stability. So we want people to stay longer, to get rooted. So I think that 5 years is too short. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just making an example that that's what some cities do. So I know, like for the city of Detroit, when they are making affordable homes, they put their restrictions only for 5 years. With a community land trust.
I'm from Detroit and pay a lot of attention to that place, and it's got some special stresses. That's a peculiar situation where 3/4 of the city ran away and 30% of the housing crumbled. So I hope we never get there.
Yep,
All right, thank you.
I agree.
Mr. Gomez. Mr. Gomez, you had your hand up? I'll move on to Mr. Palmer.
Hi. I guess one of the things I wanted to ask, because I kind of live in a more of an affordable part of town, I wanted to, I guess, ask how some of this can either help address potential crime or other sorts of issues in these neighborhoods. One of my biggest concerns right now is that there was literally a shooting in my front yard over some more or less gang and drug violence, and I, up until just now, thought this was a really safe area, or relatively safe area with some problems, and I'm in one of the neighborhoods that is actively looking for this land trust. So I'm really concerned about an increase in this kind of this kind of crime and violence, because that seems to be on the rise right now in our neighborhood.
It's a great question. I would say that community land trusts are sort of rooted in community organizing and sort of community empowerment. So there are a number of community land trusts that initially have gone into, disinvested communities and have turned them around, because you speak to the neighbors and you speak to the folks that are living there, and you give them an opportunity to collectively start owning what's happening in their own community and start making decisions on where their community should go. And these are some of the tools that a community land trust bring to the table in terms of making sure that the common is what everyone is sort of trying to buy into.
Bush.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, I appreciate the presentation, and it's a very compelling concept. What are some of the preconditions that are necessary to make this successful within the communities? And ultimately, who leads this? Who owns this? Is this a nonprofit? Is this the city? Is this, who leads this, and what are the preconditions for success?
Yeah, great questions. I would say that one of the things that you need is a community that's ready to work, because without sort of the residents really wanting change and wanting something different than what they have, then there's nobody from the outside that can come in and sort of propel this onto anyone. Community land trusts are traditionally nonprofit organizations that have an open membership, that have community members, people that are on the leasing the land on the board of directors, as well as some public stakeholders. So it's primarily been organized as a nonprofit 501c3. But it's really sort of the community saying, no, we want to do this. We're going to start organizing. We're really going to start using this tool to move our community out of where it is, or to shore up what we have.
Member Mitchell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Jason Webb, for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Hats off to Dudley Street. In my UF program, I reviewed it, and it was very compelling story what y'all did up there with Community Land Trust. My question kind of relates to what Carrie had just asked about who leads it. We are, as GCRA, under the city, and our approach is we're like a major stakeholder now, but we don't have a community point person. What is the process to get people that are in the community that would be interested in a community land trust, since we're the originators here? Also, do you have any examples of community land trusts where the housing that is provided isn't necessarily in one development? Because our inventory is could be in different locations.
Yep, so scattered site. So your first question is, how do you sort of start? How do you sort of kick this off? I would say that there have been a number of, city sort of entities, groups, even city departments that say, you know what? We as the city know that we're going to have to invest some city subsidy dollars into the construction. We're going to start to at least kick this off by doing some sort of public education. And through that public education of doing some of trainings, educating folks about the model, what usually will come out of those conversations are community leaders that are willing to step up and go a little bit deeper. And a lot of times it takes a small group of individuals to sort of start to walk through the process with recommending what the decisions need to be made to actually implement this. So one is like, what is the affordability price of a certain community? Even within inside a city, those prices can range. You want to have a small group start to work on that and start to see that, okay, this is how much subsidy we need. Can we actually get the dollars? And start to invest their own personal time into, one, understanding the model, and two, working with groups like ours that are here to really help build up that capacity so that they can start taking the necessary steps in getting the resources to start up these nonprofits. When we talk about scattered site, most community land trusts are scattered site throughout the country. So I'm thinking of like Durham, North Carolina, and the Durham Community Land Trustees. They have a very scattered site where they've been able to mix rental single-family homes with single-family home ownership, in sort of this scattered site throughout, a number of blocks within inside a certain geographic area. Dudley Street, a lot of our properties were all scattered site infill, where we had one or two large projects, but everything else was like 3 units here, 2 units there, 5 units down the street. Another group is actually Delray, the Delray Beach Community Land Trust here in Florida. They have a community land trust that, again, is also a scattered site sort of. So most CLTs are doing some of the scattered site where they're going in and realizing that, wait a minute, the city has control over a few vacant lots or a few buildings. We can turn those into affordable home ownership or even rental opportunities.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that response. I have a follow-up, if you don't mind. Sorry, Armando. We have a new housing development called Heartwood. We have market level homes, and we have 11 properties that have been set aside to be affordable housing. right now we're kind of going through the minutia of how the HOAs and stuff like that. Is there an application of this to a setting like that, a new development?
Yeah, so I would say South Florida Community Land Trust actually has done quite a few CLT homes with inside HOA sort of developments, especially brand new construction. So they're definitely a really great resource, since we know that a lot of the developments here in Florida are based in HOAs. So there's also that layering of relationships to make sure that, you know, the HOA also will allow these. Because some HOAs just won't allow for leasing of the land, that they would rather do a deed restriction, which you can do with inside a community land trust. It just takes a little bit more legal work to have the deed restriction continue to reset after so many years.
Member Dixon.
Good evening. Thanks again for the presentation. My questions are also along these same lines of kind of how do you get started? And Jason, you actually asked one question that I had in mind, so that was good. But I'm kind of curious. So how, you know, again, in the theme of how do you get started, what are some of the sources of seed funds? And do the organizations typically go after land acquisition or acquiring existing housing stock? Kind of what does the startup look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the operational sort of support comes from foundations, comes from, you know, some of the banking institutions. We've seen, especially in these past 2 years, heavy movement of actually municipalities supporting a lot more startups, because they realize that this can be an extension of government, but doesn't necessarily need to be of government. So when I think about that, I think about like the city of Houston in Houston, Texas. I think about the city of Asheville, North Carolina. Actually, a number of CLTs actually here in Florida were actually started out of their county governments, where, you know, they basically said, this is a new way of, you know, doing affordable housing and creating jobs here in Florida. We're going to go ahead and give them the 50 to 75,000 to get them started, and then they're going to have to figure out how to keep fundraising to go ahead and to keep their operations going. I completely lost your second question. Sorry.
The second question was again, in thinking about starting up, do the CLTs typically go after land acquisition or buying existing housing stock?
Yeah, and that all depends on what's out there. So I have some CLTs, like in Buffalo, New York, there's a new startup CLT called the Fruit Belt Community Land Trust. They are a mirror of my previous community in Boston, where they have nothing but vacant land. So they're primarily targeting that. I have another CLT that's in Uniondale, New York, on Long Island. And they're actually going after the remaining zombie homes that came out of the foreclosure crisis that are still in their community. So it all depends on what the housing stock sort of looks like. Most CLTs will definitely try to partner with their municipalities and figure out what inventory they have that they can donate to the CLT to go ahead and do their first project.
Member Nielsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have concern for the original homeowner, and the fact that, well, let me just say that I think the standard formula for most Americans investing in their future is the equity in their homes. And I think we all understand that. And the original homeowner is getting a subsidy, which in a general sense, when they sell 10 years after, is rolled over into their resale, and which comes out of their equity. And the amount of the subsidy that comes out of their equity is a bit concerning to me, because that's a function of some sort of calculation based upon the current real estate value of the home versus what would be normally considered to see a routine investment. That's a different variable as opposed to some sort of market investment, other kind of investment. And I just I'm unsure about that aspect of it, because I'm concerned about that person or that family that's been living there for 10 years and has been investing and putting their money into it, and they did get a subsidy, but how much of that subsidy really is going to hurt them on the other end of it if they choose to resell with return to their basic financial advancement, as many of us do in our routine family developments over the years, as I've done, as most of everybody else here has done. And I just don't want to see that person not get the advantage they should in terms of their investment in their home, and how that subsidy then is deducted from their equity at the end of the line. It's a bit problematic for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But let's make sure that we're using the same terminology.
All right.
What we cap with our resale formula is the appreciation that somebody would be getting on their home. They get 100% of their equity. Equity is, your principal down payment, any repairs you put into your home, all of that should go back to you. But one of the things that's very important to know about these programs and this model is not for individuals that can go out into the market and buy a home. God bless them, go ahead and do it. This is a model that gives folks the entryway into the real estate market, and we have studies that show that individuals do make money off these real estate deals, not as much as they would be in the market, but then again, if they were in the market, they could have bought a market home and made that money. The other thing that's also important is that we understand that financing for affordable housing continues to go down and down. We know that we're in affordable housing crisis. If half of the money that was spent 30 years ago were kept inside of these homes, then most of the affordable housing would still be around. But I've been doing this long enough where even for my own city of Boston, in 1 year, they lost 1,200 home ownership units that just went to the market. Now, they put these units in a community that they never thought was going to appreciate and put a 30-year resale restriction on it. And now that community there has now been completely gentrified because all of those homeowners cashed out, and didn't just cash out for the $55,000 that the city put in, but cashed out for like $250,000. So again, this program here is not for individuals that want to play with inside of sort of the real estate market. And again, where the roots are is we understand that this model is upsetting the traditional real estate, paradigm of you buy a house, you leverage it, you sell it, you take those proceeds, you put it into another, home. These are for individuals that may be tired of renting, may be spending just as much rent or even more than what they could actually put in a mortgage and actually get a return on it. Not the same return as you would be, sir, but definitely a return.
Well, okay, I'll stand pat at this point. I'm still not. I want the people that are originally investing to be uplifted and be able to move beyond their original status, as most of us have tried to do. And I think that's something I'm concerned with at this point. I'm listening.
And And I can definitely send out to the group a study that was just published last year by the Lincoln Land Institute for Land Policy that sort of looked through 30 years of transactions and came out with some amazing findings that sort of talk about the strength of this model and speak to exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got Mr. Gomez, who seems anxious to ask a question, and then to Member Fox.
Okay, so a couple things. Thank you, Jason. First and foremost, you brought up Boston. So since you brought up Boston, I want to go down that path. So here is my concern, and Warren sort of touched on it, and I have a lot of the same concerns as Warren does when it comes to folks having an investment or the initial buyer or investment of the home, and what that's going to look like. Because the value of this is the land, not just the home, but the land itself. And when people go to buy property, it's not the home. The home is just, it's it's kind of like the cherry on top of the ice cream and the whipped cream. But the land is the value of the land. And that is where a lot of times we're talking about solving one ill by addressing having, for example, you brought up historically ills when it came to civil rights, etc. We're trying to solve ills, right? So for you, being from Boston, probably a perfect area for you wouldn't be Braintree or Worcester. It would probably be Dorchester.
Yep.
It would be Dorchester. So let's talk about things like Dorchester. For our area, our Dorchester would be what folks would call East Gainesville. That would be our Dorchester. And it would, and then you would have Hale Plantation would be your Worcester. So saying all that is, you brought up things of, well, there's issues of civil rights. We're trying to solve one ill, and in this community, it seems like we only talk about one part of it, and we never seem to get the equation just right. And here's what I mean by that. We talk about wanting to have pockets of poverty and solving for poverty, solving for having affordability when it comes to being able folks to be able to get into a home, and all those things are absolutely right. Here's the other problem when it comes to specifically African-American home ownership for African-Americans. The ability for African-Americans to build wealth in this country has been the biggest dilemma and biggest problem in this country of building wealth. And you know what? One of the main reasons, and people know it, Jason, you know it, people like Michael Palmer know it, and a lot of people in this room know this. People that know what they're talking about know. And a lot of people in this room know what they're talking about. And here is that, is if you buy a home and you buy land, you're no longer a loaner, you're an owner. And if we can get into the business of allowing people to own their homes and own their land, that is ability to build wealth. And here's the thing that is concerning. I have no qualms with the community land trust, Jason. What my concern is, and here is my question, is actually before I start the question, some folks have asked, how does this start, Jason?
Yep.
Folks, it starts a similar way that we started the Children's Trust here in Alachua County. Similar, very similar. And we go down that path. And so, Jason, my question to you, being that you have Dudley Street, and I think Jason Mitchell brought it up and he's familiar with it. I'm not familiar with Dudley Street, but I am familiar with Dorchester, very familiar with Buffalo. Those areas are very, very different, especially than the South. So when we have to have something to contrast and compare, I would never want to compare Gainesville with even a Buffalo or even a Delray Beach. So if we have models of something that we could compare and contrast to that are equitable or even in the same sphere, then that would be something I'm interested in. So my question to you is not just about the seed capital. What are we doing to help people when they get in these homes to get in them so they can start on the path of independence and empowerment and not just staying in the same stuck place of poverty? Because that's all we're talking about is, well, we're poor. And that's, not all Black folks are poor and not all white folks are wealthy. So that's the problem when we address things of historically. So Jason, the other thing is that we talk about here that I don't know if you know about or do know about, is we tend to want to spend other people's money. Jason, it would be really facetious of me to tell you and your significant other or your family how to spend your money. Jason, I'm gonna tell you what. So Jason Mitchell brought up earlier about a development here called Heartwood. And so I'm going to say this, whether it be Jason Webb, I'll use you. Jason, because you can't afford affordable housing, here's what I think you should do. You and your family we should put you in a home built in 1941, concrete block, 2-bedroom, 1 bath. Because you know what? That's what we think you should get. That's affordable. That's good for you. And I think that's the wrong answer, Jason. That's the wrong answer. Nobody wants to be told where they should live, and that shouldn't be government at all, whether it be a public-private partnership, whether it be you as an entity. I understand we're trying to solve one ill, but we might be creating other ills. So can you help me understand, Jason, with this community land trust, how we are empowering people to not only just get into home, but be empowered to build wealth and be independent?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I would say that a number of community land trusts that look at development look at it very differently. To your point, there are community land trusts that will build affordable housing and say they're going to take it or they're going to leave it. You have other community land trusts that say, you know what, for individuals that want to get into homes, we're going to give you up to $120,000 worth of subsidy. You go find your own home. You go find your own home, we're going to put $120,000 in. The land is what we're going to sort of put within inside of our trust, and you can live in that home. The biggest thing about sort of building wealth and all those other pieces is you have to make sure that you actually have a number of other stresses off of people's backs. And one of the biggest stresses that I've seen throughout my career is the fact that we have too many individuals that don't know if they're going to be in the place where they're living this same time next year. Because rents are going up, because the landlord may want to sell and may want to kick them out. So for us, we look at this as one, yes, you want to make sure that you're putting folks in a place of home ownership and on that track, and that they also collectively can decide on where their community is going. And
Jason, sorry, go ahead.
And for references, you know, there's, again, 225 community land trusts. I can probably find a land trust that's exactly like Gainesville and match you guys up for one. I'm just taking off of the top of my head some other examples throughout the country. So please don't think that I'm being disrespectful and trying to compare you guys to larger or more experienced, you know, places when it comes to this issue. It's, for me as a consultant, I try my best to sort of say to folks, you know, there are different models out there that communities can aspire to mimic.
Jason, my other question, my
Sure.
last question to you will be this: is when we have this community land trust, I don't want to. How do we ensure that this is not going to be like the game of Monopoly, where people get into this home or this community land trust and they get involved, or they get into a land and it's kind of like you're just passing through. You're just a visitor here. You get to see all the rides. You get to look at all the fun. Everybody else gets to play, but you're just visiting. You're just passing through. You don't get to stop. This is kind of your home, but it's not really your home. You know what I mean? Is that bad? Is that analogous?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can get the analogy, but I think some of it is up to those individual homeowners what they want to do. I've sold homes to individuals that literally just want to go on the ride, just want to look at the sites, just want to lean back and be like, hey, I got my home. I don't need to do anything else. I'm secure. I got other people that have sold homes within 7 years. They've already sold and they're on their way to the market. So some of that also has to deal with the mentality that you are starting to organize the community into sort of fulfilling what they want to do. You can create a resale formula that can literally, in fact, lock people into a community and say, we're going to go deep in terms of these routes. We're not going to allow you to really resell your home. We want you to stay here for multiple generations. We have other resale formulas that will allow you within inside the national average of living in a home, which is still 7-8 years, to get a fair return for the time that you've been there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Member Fox. Okay, I don't hear anything. So I've got a couple more hands up. I'm going back to the.
I'm
Okay.
here. I'm
All
here.
right, go ahead.
Thank you, Jason, for the wonderful presentation. I heard it a year or so at our state NACP meeting, and they were promoting the land trust. So since you're making this presentation here with the GCRA today, what financial obligations are you asking for from this organization?
Me personally, I'm not asking for anything. I've just been.
The land trust, what's required?
So for any community land trust to have a partnership with, you know, a city entity that would basically say that the city is going to commit that a certain amount of their affordable housing dollars that they may give out, they may sort of produce, will go into this sort of model. That's what we strive for when we talk to groups about starting up a community land trust, that you want a commitment from the city to go ahead and to not allow for these subsidies to just be forgiven after a short amount of time, that you want lasting affordability. And this could be a model that lasting affordability can be deployed.
Okay, now there's a community, I think Commissioner Johnson had a workshop over at Spring Hill a year or so ago, and there was a group that came from Durham, North Carolina. Are you familiar with that group that turned everything around and made this beautiful community?
Yes,
Durham?
I am. The Community Land Trustees. Their executive director is Selena Mack.
Okay. So what would it take for us to get something like that in Gainesville? Because they came from Durham last year, and I think Commissioner Simmons and Johnson, they actually made a trip there. And I understand it's a very flourishing community now, and people are taking pride in home ownership. And I think that's what we need here in Gainesville.
Yeah, I would say that it's up to this group here in terms of how you want to start. Again, it needs to start from the communities in which you think that this model is going to be appropriate for.
Okay.
You need to get those individuals educated about the model, get them into trainings, get them start to thinking about what does this look like, and start to answer some of these other, start to wrestle with some of these tough questions that have been brought up even here tonight.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Still have a couple of hands up. Member Palmer.
Hi. Yeah, hearing you talk, I have kind of a couple more, hopefully maybe trying not to get too far into the weeds on anything, but kind of just some general questions about how some of this might work. Are there examples of community land trusts that are focused more on modernizing and renovating houses? From my opinion as a realtor, it seems like there are a lot of houses that are available, but say not necessarily livable and not energy efficient. I was just recently speaking to a neighbor that's paying, you know, she's maybe paying $900 a month here in a 1,200 square foot apartment, but is paying, I think, $450 in utility bills because she's got a landlord that's not updating and modernizing things. So it seems like if we in Gainesville could focus on things like renovation type stuff, we'd be in a situation where we can provide people a modern energy efficient house, which would bring down their power costs as well, because of how much, you know, that's a huge concern here.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that like the city of Chicago is piloting a project right now with their community land trust where they're giving homeowners $40,000 worth of upgrades and sort of repairs or tax payment delinquency sort of cleanup and for the exchange of affordability covenants on their property,
Okay.
which at this point is going to be a deed restriction. But once the property is sold, then it's going to be put into a ground lease with inside their community land trust.
Okay. How do things like that work with ongoing maintenance on houses and ensuring that these community land trust houses, once they make it into the land trust, are maintained to the quality? Because that seems to me a big issue around my neighborhood, that people can find mortgages for relatively inexpensive houses and find some affordability, but when big things like a roof or an air conditioner come up, those are repairs that don't get done because somebody has to already have $15,000 cash to do a roof, or even $5,000 cash on a small place. But
Or I think, as what most homeowners have to go through, if a storm comes through and you got to do an insurance claim, a lot of that stuff comes out of pocket. And, for most homeowners that own their homes, market rate, that's even a challenge. You can compare that to a person that does not make as much in terms of income, what some of barriers that they have to do. Some CLTs have tackled this issue by creating different funds with inside. So appealing to certain donors where they get those donations and put them into a fund to be able to help homeowners with these types of issues. The other thing that some CLTs do is they will put a fee on their ground lease that is about a replacement, reserve, and repair, fee that basically goes into a fund to be able to keep up with some of that ongoing maintenance. When it comes to rental, it's on the community land trust that basically owns the property. But a lot of this, even if you go into home ownership or rental, especially for home ownership, you want to make sure that you're doing the pro formas and that you're, making the property as affordable as possible by looking at the utilities, by looking at the materials that you're going to be building, by sort of trying to anticipate what's going to happen and build programs that will ultimately help those individuals. So I know like some CLTs, even in this state, where, they'll build or they'll renovate a home and immediately put solar on it because they feel like, all right, well, that will definitely help take care of this, or that they have standards around some of the building materials that they'll use.
okay. And I guess, sorry to be taking up too much time. I have two more kind of just details kind of questions. Since we're kind of already talking pro formas, I'd like to maybe talk through just, I'm a realtor in town, and so I kind of have a pretty good sense of what things are going for around here. So typically in these neighborhoods, you might be able to find a lot for people. A lot of the reason land hasn't been sold here in Gainesville is because of the price people are asking for those lots. They tend to be, most of the time when developers are looking to find a lot, they're looking for that lot to represent 10% of the value of the home they're going to build on it. So if you're, building, if you're trying to build an affordable $120,000 house, you're looking for a $12,000 lot. Those lots here around my neighborhood are going for, are asking $35,000 to $50,000 for those lots. I think one potentially positive thing about this community land trust, assuming those lots are owned by the original landowner, the community land trust can help promote some of the generational wealth by purchasing these near those asking prices, and just assuming the market will eventually catch up to that value. But say that's $50,000 there. Typically build costs right now for what I would consider towards an affordable but in good condition, maybe modern windows, good insulation, that type of stuff, something that's going to last for a while, is probably about $120 a square foot right now. So if we build something in these neighborhoods say 1,000 square foot house, which would be a good 3.2 for somebody, or maybe a 3.2, 4.2 in these neighborhoods. We're looking at say $170,000 total all in on some of these type of projects if it's a ground up project. If we were to, because I just pulled up a quick calculator, and just for this is kind of just for the sake of, I guess everyone's general knowledge. If we did something like a $50,000 subsidy, which would cover that land, essentially, that's affecting people's income or affecting people's payment by about $250 a month if they're able to get a 30-year mortgage. It would reduce somebody's overall payment by about $250 a month. I'd like people to consider, how, depending on different income levels, obviously that can have a big effect for some people, or that may have not that much of an effect for other people. So I guess I'd like people to consider that. And one of my question that all that kind of built up to is where is that line between somebody who can kind of qualify for, this $120,000, they might only be able to qualify for $120,000 mortgage, but in today's real estate market, assuming those people have good credit and consistent income, there are options for like the FHA type of other loans available to them. And where does that kind of line fall? Because I feel like the people that are just barely out of the, I'm worried about the people that are just barely out of the land trust, but kind of in that stretching to get an FHA mortgage, because those people I think are, have done the work to get they've got a good income, they've done the work to get their credit up. And I'm hoping that they don't fall through the cracks because, somebody else can qualify for the land trust where they can't. So I guess I'm curious on where that line looks like for some.
I truly think it all depends on where the community land trust wants to land in terms of its clientele. I have some CLTs that are working with families up to 120% of the AAMI.
Okay.
And they go all the way down to 50. So they actually have a much broader sort of scope because, again, they want to catch those individuals that might be out of that 80%, might be at 90%, might be at 100, and that they have the flexible subsidy to be able to go ahead and fill that. The golden rule, as most folks here probably know, is 30%. 30% is what you should be affording in terms of your housing cost. And when we talk to folks about going through some of the education around how to create a resale formula, you also have to create what is your affordable pricing methodology. And what does 30% look like for the AAMIs in your community? And what does that ultimately mean of a mortgage that they can afford? And then it's like, okay, we know that they could only afford a $100,000 mortgage. We know that construction costs, even with subsidy, is $120,000. That still means we got a $20,000 gap that we need to figure out how to sort of fill. So those are some of the conversations and some of the work that needs to be put into place as you think about possibly creating a community land trust, is where you start with who is your clientele, how much can they afford, and then running those numbers based on the ratios. Okay.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm seeing after a conversation today, I think some FHA type loans are, I'm a little confused on how the AAMI compares to other sorts of ratios, but for something like an FHA loan,
FHA won't touch these. FHA does not like lease land.
Okay.
So right now we have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac products that can be leveraged in terms of mortgage products that can go with inside of a community land trust. FHA, they want the community land trust to give up the land in the event of foreclosure. And that's something that we would
Hmm.
never advise a community land trust to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Understandable. Thanks.
Member Mitchell, you had another question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I ask my question, just want to make comment. I think after listening to you and answering some of our questions, I think I really see the versatility and customization that's afforded us in how we design our own CLT. And as you've picked off a lot of different cases of what people are doing, is there some kind of repository of ideas of what people are doing that we can have access to? And also, our interest in getting people to build wealth and get that mindset. It seems like whoever is on the board, we can design things that could educate people, if I'm hearing what CLTs can do and have the agency to do. So besides the repository question, I
Yep.
want to get into the dynamics of the governance in terms of like this tripartite situation, and maybe places where there may have been some kind of issue or disagreement amongst the board that may have been very difficult, and how do they work? How do those dynamics work, and how did they work through it?
So for your first question, repository is our website, groundedsolutions.org. We have a whole section that's about a startup hub, which basically walks you through 6 major questions that you need to ask as you're thinking about a community land trust. And we give different examples and also different like plug and play models that you can play with. So that's the first thing. The second point that you made about sort of building wealth, because you are the developer that never leaves, because you're a part of this real estate transaction with this new homeowner, you have the building of that relationship in the same way that I think Mr. Palmer, who's a real estate, he's in real estate, so he knows that once he sells a home, it's not like that relationship ever ends. That those folks sort of stick with him or have questions and they can, go back to him. It's the same thing with a community land trust, and that's what opens it up for this wealth building, because you've already looked at their previous expenses, their previous rent, and you're setting them up for a mortgage that could show them savings. Most CLTs will say to folks, there's 2 things that we have every homeowner go through within the first 30 days of them closing on their home. One is estate planning, because we want to make sure that if anything happens, that their second thing is you are seeing some savings now that you're a homeowner. What do you do with that extra money? Let's get some money managers. Let's talk to you about where you can put this money so that it can grow, and that you're not just relying on the home to be your wealth engine. So that's just a point that I just want to put out there, that CLTs, because of that relationship, you have that access to that homeowner. But to your question about governance, and this is where, you have the board of directors that the model calls for the tripartite board. In the early beginnings, a lot of the decisions are actually made by the community members, because you don't have anybody leasing land yet. So you actually have the community sort of making some of these decisions on resale formula, program design, and other program elements. When leaseholders come in, it is a sense of them having a seat at the table because they're directly impacted. But a lot of boards look at those homeowners as their guiding star, of being like, hey, you actually live on this. How can we actually make it so that it's improving your life, that issues that come up that we can help you with, that we're actually working in partnership with each other. Now, the power of both of these groups to appoint the stakeholders group is the fact that we've designed it in a way where we're allowing for the duly elected, body of board members to bring on allies that are going to work with them and not against them. If there are difficulties with inside the board of an issue, they'll usually get hammered out like any other nonprofit board where, there'll be discussions, there'll be debates, there'll be votes. We usually have CLT set up as odd numbers. So then there isn't ever a stalemate that's baked into, the structure. So we've tried to make it as democratically run as it was always intended to be by, by the founders of the model, where they really felt like collective voice, collective decision-making, also collective debating is what's healthy.
Okay, we got a couple more raised hands. Member Nielsen.
No, I've already spoken.
Okay, I'm gonna lower your hand then. And Member Fox. Member Fox, you have your hand up again? You're on mute.
I'm muting. Okay, thank
There you
you. Now I'm back to Durham, North Carolina, because I was very impressed with that presentation. Did they buy up the land and develop that community there, or how did that come about? And they said it was really affordable, and affordable to some people isn't affordable to others.
Yep.
If you're making $15 an hour, and by the time they take your taxes and your insurance and other things, you probably might be making about $17,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to define affordable, because affordable from the Gainesville, Ms. Harrison knows, they did a presentation at my church. That really wasn't affordable. I think we have a problem with what is affordable in Gainesville. If a person is making that $15 an hour, they cannot afford to pay a mortgage of $600 or $700.
Yep.
So that's the kind of affordable ability I'm talking about. But from what I understood from the group from Durham, it was affordable. Most people had the nice little houses, and they were like $600 a month or something like that. And if they pass all the city codes, can you do some more investigation on how they developed their program? Because I think that is the one closer that I'm aware of than the one you were talking about in Chicago and all those other places. We can't even compare with those places.
Yeah, no worry. I mean, I would say that for even Chicago and a few other places, they have pockets that, if you're talking about $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 is what folks are making. There's definitely communities in those cities that are trying to deploy this. But Durham, North Carolina, their story is legendary because they're about to celebrate 35 years of them operating. And initially, a lot of city money went into going ahead and acquiring all of those properties. So a lot of those properties that they were initially acquiring were sort of, really run down, really sort of, but they were picking them up for 10 to 15,000. I mean, but again, that was like 35 years ago. And then they were able to bring city money to bear to go ahead and purchase them and also rehab them. So when we talk about sort of homeowners spending $600, $700, I've always put a question whether is that better suited for an individual that is looking at home ownership, or is that better for them being in a secure, affordable rental situation where their rent is not going to be increased, where they can sort of still have decent, affordable housing. It's just in a rental place rather than trying to put them into a very heavily subsidized home for that price. But then if something goes wrong, then they are, basically, put themselves into more debt because they're trying to fix their home. Just last week, my main water pipe that goes into my home broke. That was like a $500 and something repair. And for me, it struck me because I'm like, wait a minute. If one of these homeowners that are literally on the edge and we're trying to get them into home ownership, how are we supposed to, really help them? Or are we actually setting them up for failure and not realizing that they shouldn't be in a home ownership right now? We can put them into a rental and actually give them a pathway towards home ownership.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, getting close. Mr. Gomez.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I'll just digress and let us so we can move forward. I'm done.
Okay. Do we have any more board members with comments? I don't see any hands up. Seeing none, would any members of the public might like to make a comment? If you're attending by phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. You'll be given 3 minutes to comment, and please mute the sound on your computer device and state your name clearly. And I'm going to look to staff because I can't tell if anybody from the public is doing anything or not.
We don't have any hands up from the public.
Okay. Then I'll end this then by saying first, thank you to this board for an incredible set of questions. This is a very detailed subject, a lot of opportunities, a lot of interesting ideas, and I thought I was illuminated by a lot of the questions that have taken place. And Mr. Webb, thank you for coming and answering the questions. The experience that you have was essential to helping us kind of understand this, and I'm sure we will be reaching back out to you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Yep. So our next item of business is Business Improvement Grant Program. And I think Mr. Blumberg is going to present.
I will be, just 1 second.
That would be great.
There we go. Wanted to get my video feed up and running. All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Blumberg. I'm excited to present to you the Business Improvement Grants Program. I'd like to take a moment to tell you a little bit more about me. This December, I'll have been at the GCRA for 2 years. I have been working on overseeing facade improvements incentive program for existing commercial buildings, the residential paint grant program. I've also been involved in budgeting and entering purchase orders for the GCRA. And I have recently been working on the GNV CARES program with Chelsea Bukaitis to enter for payment the approved applicants. So I'm going to point out after this slide, each of my slides in the bottom right corner are going to have a page number. If you would, owing to the format of this meeting, if you have any questions, please write down what page number it is and the question. And at the end of the presentation, I'll open it up for questions and be happy to answer them at that time. So I'll be presenting to you the program history in brief, talking about the goals of the revisions, and then getting more in depth about the proposed program revisions themselves. Please keep in mind, to avoid taking an inordinate amount of time, I'll be focusing only on the major changes and the why behind them. There are hundreds of minor changes that were made, but I'll be focusing on the major ones. I will then recap with a summary of improvements, followed by next steps and the GCRA recommendation. So what was the program? This was a program that works to assist businesses in reinvesting in themselves and the community. One of the key goals of the GCRA and the CRA for it has been to revitalize the areas within its district. One of these methods has been this style of program, which is a grant program, reimbursable grant type program, both within our district here and across the entire state of Florida. And during the process of doing this rebuilding of this program, I examined over 20 different programs from across the state of Florida to see basically the best of that's being done in the state so that we can implement improvements to our program. So previously, this program started in 2003. It was on hold most of the current fiscal year and some of the last fiscal year. There are a couple of projects that are still in process that came in under the program prior to it going on to pause. You can see on this slide here, the Dick Mondell's restaurant. You can see before and after. So this was a project that Dick Mondell's invested $85,000 or so of their funds. And upon completion and their payment of their contractors, we gave them a $15,000 grant back. That was, of course, approved by the board, and we had to certify all of the receipts in order for them to qualify to get the funds at the end of the program. So successes in FY19, we had combined $515,000 in change worth of funding that was invested in our community. Out of that, just over $220,000 was GCRA grant funds, and just over $294,000 was private investments. So we had 5 primary goals of the revisions. We needed to consolidate the 4 former programs. Previously, each of the districts had its own program, and there were differences between them with the closure of the singular districts, and our rebuilding into one district required a new program to be put together. We wanted to also focus on clarifying policy. And as I go over into some of the program revisions, I'll point out some of the pieces, the major ones that help to clarify the policy there. We wanted to concentrate impact. So while the entire district does qualify for grants in order to have more funding potentially available for you, there are different means of which that you can do that. And I will, again, talk to you about that shortly. We also needed to improve the administrative process. We wanted to basically improve our turnaround time so that between applicants, a completed applicant being submitted, application being submitted to us, we could turn around and get them hopefully an approval in a very timely manner. And last but not least, we needed to build a user-friendly document with an easy flow that was easy for the applicant to understand. We're more than happy to answer questions, of course, when they ask us, but we want them to be able to see the answers themselves in the document when they're actually going through it. So proposed program revisions. The program name, we have as our proposed updated name, the Business Improvement Grants Program. This is a much shorter but inclusive title compared to the previous program name, which was the Facade Improvements Incentive Program for Existing Commercial Buildings. For our area, as I mentioned, we had previously 4 separate programs, one for each of the districts. The proposed update is this singular program for our entire district. The program grant offerings, previously there were different maximum funds available per district. Obviously, College Park had more funding than the other districts. That is now, everything is in one district. We have a set amount of funding coming in. So this is where we're going to have a proposed tier-based funding structure. So it won't matter where in the district you are, as long as you meet the qualifications, you'll qualify for a certain amount of funding. And I'll get into the tier-based funding structure shortly. The evaluation of grant applications, there was previously a point-based system to assist in determining if the participant met the requirements. That has been removed because there was a lot of ambiguity in there. For example, one of the items in there was best use of the building. And that was a value of between 0 and 5. And my best use of the building and someone else's best use of a building was very subjective. And so this is also replaced with a tier-based funding structure. You'll either meet the requirements for the tier-based funding structure or you'll qualify for one of the lower tiers. We had previously in the document programs, digital design assistance. This has been removed. In practicality, the reason that's being removed is we don't have the personnel that are qualified to actually assist in digitally designing someone's building upgrade. That should be getting captured by their assistance with the architectural fees, and we'll go over that in just a moment. The eligibility requirements, original guideline allowed multifamily projects. Specifically now, the proposed update is to allow nonprofits to apply. Of course, we'll be allowing commercial as well. Residential and governmental facilities do not. Continue under eligibility requirements. There was no language concerning new construction. The proposed update, the building must be at least 5 years old. This is really to clarify and to help consolidate investments and reinvestments in areas that are older, and not just assist somebody whose building was potentially have built within the last couple of years, or in this case, 5 years. I also mentioned, I believe earlier, that I did do work with the Gainesville Cares program. And under that program, we discovered that a lot of businesses within the city limits did not have business licensure as they should have had. Now, while this is a proposed update to require it, if someone does not currently have that license, we're not saying that they can't ever apply. They just need to go and get the current City of Gainesville business license, and then they can work on completing their application and resubmit it. We also had, and this is part of the clarification of the program, there were numerous parts that were not clearly defining key words, one of them being storefronts. The proposed update is to clearly define that. A storefront is the front side of a building facing a transit corridor. Continue under the eligible improvements, architectural fees previously were capped at $500. So if you were to get a $5,000 grant, then your architectural fees were capped at that $500. If you got a $15,000 grant, your architectural fees were also capped at a $500 amount. The proposed update is the architectural fees not to exceed 10% of the project amount. That's viewed as basically if someone's working on a larger project, this gets back into the design assistance. They'll be able to recapture some of that design work as part of those architectural fees as part of the grant's reimbursement. So under the ineligible improvements, there were previously 2 separate sections for this, one for excluded improvements and one for maintenance. For ease of reading, this is just combined into one section, and a couple pieces of redundant information there were removed. Under each of the previous programs, we did have target corridors, and they all had their own unique target corridors in some cases because they all encapsulated different sections of our area. We now have the GCRA 1 district, and our target corridor list was taken from the adopted GCRA reinvestment plan. That GCRA reinvestment plan was developed in coordination with the community during our community meetings, so that we are reflecting what the community is wanting us to target for our corridors. Matching funds. The program was not consistent in calling out that the matching grant was for 50%. This was a consistency piece. The updates to clearly state that it's now 50% and has been a 50% matching grant program. Application requirements. So I have a few different items here. We did require previously photographs of the existing building conditions. Just added in that we want the photos to show the relation, if any, to the transit corridor. We also want to, and this is an important piece, 2 cost estimates from different sources was required under the original guidelines. To clarify that, the cost estimates must be an apples to apples cost estimate. So previously I might have gotten from somebody cost estimates where they gave me an estimate for the electrical and they gave me an estimate for somebody to change the outside of the building and something for landscaping. But those were 3 different estimates. What we really need to see and want to see is 2 or 3 different estimates for each pieces of that work, so that we're comparing an apple to apple, so that our goal here is to make sure that they're getting the best value for the work being done. So they're not just talking to one contractor for doing the work. Also, in the application, if they're going to be doing any non-eligible work, we want that called out. While we can't reimburse it, it saves us time on our back end that we don't have to go back and try pulling that out after the fact. We also did not call out previously a work schedule. Work schedule here is very simple. We want to know when work is expected to start and when it is expected to end, because there is a 12-month time frame to be able to complete the work. So under application process, previously we didn't provide a timeline for the review process. Our update is we want to be able to perform the initial review of the grant within 30 days so that we can have feedback back to the applicants, especially if they need to fix anything to get it back into us. Now, for the application process, previously also we had a requirement for each district's board to approve a completed application. So this is you're going to see this 2 here, and there's one on the next slide talking about this change. But this change in authorization follows the city's guidelines for spending, whereby the GCRA director can sign off for up to $50,000. The city manager can sign off for up to $100,000 and over. Over $100,000 would need to be approved by the city commission. So you'll see that each of these builds upon the other. If there was a potential grant for over 50 and under 100,000, the GCRA director would have to go through and approve it prior to going to city manager for approval. And then if it was for over $100,000, it would have to be approved by the GCRA director and then the city manager, and then a presentation would be given to the city commission for approval. So the application process continued as here as well. We did not previously provide to the applicants in the section when the 12-month period starts. Part of the clarification in the document, the 12 months begins the date the agreement is countersigned by the city. The application process, I thought it was important that the facade easements that was taken out was mentioned here, because in clarification and ease of the applicant understanding the application and the program, want to make sure that they understood that there was going to be a 5-year easement that was going to be taken out on the property. That's the 5-year easement is effectively the same as what was under the previous program. So application deadline, previously there was language concerning a 5 p.m. deadline 4 weeks before a board meeting. This is proposed update is to change that to applications are accepted on a rolling basis contingent on funding. If program is paused, a waiting list will be implemented. We also added an evaluation of applications section. Basically specifies that only completed applications are eligible. Incomplete will be returned for issues to be corrected. A minor change here, the guidelines was renamed and improvements made. So the grant guidelines, the proposed update is to change that to program guidelines. Underneath program guidelines, we have 2 different major pieces. Didn't specify if new grant applicants would have priority over repeat applicants. The proposed update specifies that new grants applicants will have priority. This is basically because we want to reinvest in an area. We don't want to be, well, we would love to be able to continue to reinvest in the same projects. Our goal is to be able to have an entire area be lifted as well. And finally, under the program guidelines, to allow use of photographs to be used in future publications was under the original guidelines. We also, the proposed update to that is to allow the city to place temporary signage on the property to promote the actual program. This way our community and our neighbors can actually see that the program is working in the area, and also as advertisement, other businesses could see that they could potentially apply as well. So the last major program revision, I think this is, in my mind, a large one, allows for the city manager to approve de minimis changes to the program that do not involve grant dollar amounts or program geographical areas, including target corridors. This is done so that if we have minor corrections in the program, if we catch there was a spelling mistake, or we want to make a small change to the program that doesn't involve the dollar amounts, geographic areas, or target corridors, we can make that without having to go back to the board and city commission to be able to make that program. There would, of course, be a log kept for the who, what, when, why, and how that change was made. So there would be accountability for that. So I mentioned before that our GCRA boundary and district is everything in orange on this screen. Everybody inside this district is going to be eligible for tier 1 of the funding availability. And I wanted to show you all the targeted corridors that were identified by the GCRA Reinvestment Plan. So you have Northeast 8th Avenue, University Avenue, Southeast 2nd and 4th Avenue, as well as Northwest 13th Street, Southeast Hawthorne Road, Waldo Road, and Williston Road. So I've mentioned the proposed tiered funding structure. I'll apologize in advance. I know some of the text on this slide is a bit small, so I will read it out to you. As I mentioned, tier 1 is located anywhere within the GCRA boundary, provides for a 50% matching grant of up to $10,000. The tier 2 provides for a matching 50% grant of up to $30,000 if 2 of the 4 below are met. The storefront is greater than 30 feet in width. The storefront is on the target corridor. The storefront is comprised of multiple stories, where the business owner is registered with the City of Gainesville as a small, local, or diverse business. So we really do want to help encourage small, local, or diverse businesses to be able to really take part in this program and make it easier for them to be able to qualify to get assistance in reinvesting in their building and therefore our community. Tier 3 provides for 50% matching grants of up to $50,000 if 3 of the 6 below are met. The items from the Tier 2 list. Additionally, if another option here is 75% or more of storefronts within one building are being externally renovated, this requirement would entail a single entity applying for the multiple storefronts. This gets into basically assisting us on the administrative back end. If we have one application for 3 or 4 or 5 storefronts all at one time, as opposed to individual applications, it makes it a lot easier for us to do the processing on that, and it also helps them to qualify for some additional funding. The last item on the tier 3 would be if the storefront is a grocery store deriving at least 50% of yearly sales from groceries. This hopefully will help alleviate food deserts inside of our district. So with luck, we'll have some grocery stores that will take advantage of that. Tier 4 provides for 50% matching grant of up to $150,000 if the following is met. The building is listed on the National Register of Historic Places or listed on the City of Gainesville's Historic Local Register listings. There are not a lot of these buildings inside of our district, but the ones that are could potentially need additional assistance in being able to do reinvestment in the building and renovations for the exterior of that building. So, summary of improvements: the proposed business improvement grant program, changing the evaluation methodology to a simpler, objective qualification tier-based system. The tier qualification system allows for access to higher funds based on qualifications met. Small, local, and diverse businesses can potentially qualify for additional funding, and an improved approval process allows for faster turnaround time to the applicants. Next steps, today's presentation. Anticipated presentation to the City Commission on November 5th, 2020. Once approved, we'd be able to begin promotion. We have over 40 plus businesses on a waiting list. We would contact them by email or by phone, potentially press release, GCRA website articles, social media, GNV news. Currently, as part of the FY 2021 budget that was approved by the GCRA board and subsequently implemented by the City Commission, we do have a budget of $250,000 for this program. Participation in the program would influence recommended FY 22 funding. So, recommendation: the GCRA Director to GCRA Advisory Board approved the Business Improvement Grant Program as presented. And as promised, I am opening it up for any questions that anyone has. I'm happy to expand on any pieces that you would like to talk about.
Questions from the board? I don't see any hands up yet. Mr. Palmer.
Oh yeah, you knew I was gonna ask something. Okay, so I guess I have a couple questions about So how would things like, say for specific examples, something like a mural on the side of a face that maybe faces a transit, something like that function? When we're looking at things like, that kind of comes more towards there's a specific artist or a specific person that may be able to do the right thing for the business, but you kind of can't really go and seek a bid from them. Are things like that uh, able to be brought forward for this?
So we have, for an example, there was a mural that was done on Florida Theater. Um, we, and I do understand your point about you might want to find a specific artist to be able to do the work. The goal behind this program is to assist you in being able to find the best pricing for being able to do the work. So yes, while there is one person you might have in mind to do it, there likely is someone else that is also capable of doing the same style of work that you're trying to do. So hopefully you would be able to find at least one other person. The minimum requirement is to have two. Obviously, for your sake or whoever's doing the work, you probably should be looking into having more than just one person. Two at an absolute minimum in my mind. The more the better, because you are hopefully going to get a better value from being able to find somebody else in addition to your primary person that could potentially do the work.
Okay, I would push back on that only in the sense of, right now, because this is something that you and I will probably be talking fairly soon, anyways. That say something like there's a specific Native American artist who I'd like to come, kind of even bring to Gainesville for potentially a mural, and there's kind of not really someone doing anything specifically like that. Is there, for things like that, are there ways to maybe we, rather than seeking that, I guess this is probably getting into the weeds, but rather than seeking that, maybe seeking paint assistance or something like that?
So, and I've have some answers to your question. We can potentially work with PRCA for murals.
Okay.
They have a program that could potentially assist with that. That might not be through the Business Improvement Grant Program, though.
Okay. All right, that's fine. That's interesting. I wanted to ask what, if we could go back. I'm sorry, I didn't write down the slide number. The slide number on your corridors that you have. Yeah. The only one that I'm obviously going to ask is are we not including South Main Street or Main Street, and what was maybe the justification on that?
So the GCRA reinvestment plan, we went and had we had 4 different community meetings with community engagements, and each of these targeted corridors were ones that were identified under the GCRA reinvestment plan by our community members and businesses at those meetings. South Main Street and Main Street was not included on that list.
I mean, I do remember things like, are we separating that because we're not including things like Lynch Park? Because I know that was a major, that was a focus. The new fire station was a focus. It seems like there are a good number of projects that could be available on South Main Street, or that people would potentially like to renovate there.
So keep in mind also, and I understand your concern on that, we were trying to make sure that the target corridors reflected what we had come to us from the community engagement, but anyone inside of our district qualifies outright for the tier 1. For tier 2, which goes up to the $30,000 of the 50% matching grant, you have to have 2 of the 4, which is a storefront greater than 30 foot and width. The storefront is on a target corridor. The storefront is comprised of multiple stories, or the business occupant owner is registered with the city of Gainesville as a small, local, or diverse business. So the hope is, even if you're not on a target corridor, if you're looking to do a larger piece of work and get more of the reinvestment back, or more of the grant back, is that you would have 3 of those other, or potentially 2 of those other 4 to be able to qualify under for the additional funds there.
Okay. I guess that leads into my next question. What is I don't know what the small, local, or diverse business is qualified, you know, what that is. I mean, I know what those words mean, but I don't know that. Is that a program or is that there
So
a
the city of
list?
Gainesville allows business to register with it as small, local, or diverse businesses. So in short, there's a dollar amount that you, I can double check that for you and get back to you for what the dollar amount is for the small. But local obviously is local ownership of the business. So think like not a chain store or chain building. Diverse business would be a minority owned business.
Okay. Okay, cool. As long as there's, you know, somewhere we can figure out that. And then I guess last one, this is probably still nitpicky within tier 2, and maybe you'll run in this with other buildings. I don't know if you will, but multiple stories. I have a 30-foot tall building, but it's only 1 story. Have you guys, I mean, I don't know if that's even necessarily relevant because I think I can qualify for 2 of these, but is that something that just the weeds? Maybe we talk about that some other time.
I think it's
Put it in the
probably
window.
a bit of the weeds. And I understand your concern with it being a 30-foot tall building. Part of that is the assumption under that is you would have multiple businesses comprising of those additional stories that you're renovating for. So the current writing of it is for this one is for multiple stories for the building. My personal recommendation is to keep that language at this time. I understand your concern with it being a 30-foot interior, but that is really a single business that's operating within that footprint.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm interested, you know, interested in the spirit of it, but yeah, and last final nitpicky thing. So for some of these things, there are, you know, like storefront glass, for example, there's kind of really only 1 game in town that's doing it. And otherwise we're starting to look at other people from outside of Gainesville. You know, how is the program going to look at, you know, is there more value placed, because, you know, you're looking at trying to find value for these people, is there more value placed on getting a local contractor to do something? Or if, you know, sometimes Jacksonville businesses are large enough, they can just send a crew over, it's an extra hour and they could be cheaper. What is, you know, how does that stuff reflect in this program?
So that's not currently reflected in this program to attempt to require only local businesses to be doing the work. It would make the program, and I understand your points, it would make the program more complicated on our ends to attempt to do that. We are trying to ensure that they're getting the quotes because we're using public funds. If you did have a Jacksonville business that gave you a quote and you have the local business give you a quote, my assumption would be that the local business would give you better pricing than the Jacksonville business. So that would still be having met the requirements of having at least 2 quotes for doing the work at the business.
Okay. I mean, I think this is a fantastic job. I think you've done some amazing work compared to what the program is. I think it's really well thought out, and this is really, you know, really great. I mean, to me, it's really great to see. So, thanks for the work on this.
Thank you,
Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Daniel, I had some questions for you with respect to some of the tiers. First and foremost, can you reiterate one more time what is the logic and reason for why we're going to the tiered system? Just so I make sure I have an understanding.
So it's multiple reasons and why. So previously there were 4 different districts, right? And each of the districts had differing maximum fund amounts that were available to them. So we're combining all 4 of those districts to a program that covers the entire area. Previously, there was less funding available for, say, businesses on East Side. So now we're actually making funding through the tier system. It's a much easier system for qualifying for a higher amount of funding wherever you are potentially within the district. Also, the point-based system that we were using previously was very subjective to interpretation. So like I mentioned in the example, under the point-based system previously, there was 0 to 5 points for best use of a building renovation reinvestment. And your definition of what is that best use for that up to the 5 points could be very different from what my interpretation of what the best use for that. I might say, well, I think that should be a hospital. That would be the best use. Where meanwhile, you're, maybe you thought a grocery was the best use for that location. So this is making it in my opinion, my recommendation, a much simpler, more objective and quantifiable tier-based system. So we're taking out the subjectivity from what the program was before on that point base.
Opinion, I have a follow-up on that. The thing that I have concern about, that where we had some of the greatest cause for concern, and I couldn't agree with you more about the point-based systems and subjectivity. The one thing that we were finding before was and it was clearly glaring, was within the amount of funding apparatus and focus on projects. The one that gives me the most cause for concern and pause, Daniel, is tier 4, in as much as it talks about being listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. Traditionally, for businesses, especially within the former area that were of the board, which I was on at the time, which was the East Side Board, that has been a hindrance when it came to development and apparatus. I guess what I would like to see, and I don't know necessarily if this would be an answer from you, Daniel, or it would be an answer from Ms. Bowie or from the city manager, is how is this going to encourage development in the urban core? How is this going to encourage apparatuses to have better rates of return on investment, especially in the area for East Side in which we're trying to target? And if somebody could answer that for me, that'd be great.
So, I mean, I'll take a stab at an answer for you on this. So, unfortunately, there are not very many buildings that obviously qualify for this type of improvement. The goal is those buildings are going to, if they're going to be renovated, they're going to require a fair amount of work and funding to do so. Now, that said, they would not necessarily go all the way up to $150,000 with this being a 50% matching grant program. They would actually have to be spending with quantified and approved expenses $300,000 up front on their side to be able to then get this up to $150,000 as a reimbursement back. And this gets into the funding and approval process that I covered earlier, when any of these projects or programs come forward and it's for $100,000 worth of grant funds, that would require a presentation to go to the city commission for city commission approval. So there would be another step where it would actually go before city commission to justify that potential expenditure prior to an approval being issued for that.
Okay, thank you, Danny.
And to, of course, the advisory board as well.
Member Mitchell. Member
Yes,
Mitchell.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation, first of all. My question's on page 5 of the presentation. The point of where you say concentrate impact, were you unpacking that with the corridor explanation, or was there something else you were trying to allude to?
So the concentrate impact, I'm going to flip back over to the tier list just real quick from there. So it is both the target corridor, but we're also trying to concentrate impact, as you see in the tier 2 for small, local, or diverse businesses. We want to make it easier for them to be able to qualify as well for the additional funding. So that's also part of the concentrating of the impact. So we do really want to insist and encourage our small, local, and diverse businesses to be able to receive funding.
Okay. Second question relates to the very page that you're on. The point where you say storefront is greater than 30 feet in width. Is there any tolerance on that? I mean, like, can they be within a certain range of that, or is that just a hard figure, 30 feet? And also, how did you come up with that number?
So this number is reflective of the previous program. There was a piece in the previous programs that did have part of going back to the point-based system. Part of one of the points was if you were greater than 30 feet in width. So that was at the time considered a medium to large size storefront. And so we continue to use that as one of the qualifications for the tier 2.
Is that a hard number, or is there going to be a little bit of a tolerance on that if somebody falls close to that number maybe?
The way the program is currently written, that is currently at this time a hard number. There are, again, for this, you only have to meet 2 of these 4 requirements to qualify for the tier 2. And if you are under 30 feet in width, you would still qualify. If you didn't meet 2 of those 4, you still qualify for the tier 1, which means if you were spending up to, basically, the business spent $20,000, they would qualify for the $10,000 of grant funds back.
Understood. I was just seeing if that number was if there was any compromise with that number. Also, I didn't write down the page number, but there was one where you had the eligibility. You were talking about eligibility. I think it was in the first part.
For eligible improvements?
Requirements, maybe?
Eligibility requirements.
Yeah, that's it. Am I understanding this correct? You said specifically allowed nonprofits to apply, but we're including for-profits, right? Is that to be understood?
Of course, yes. This is
okay. It's just,
also geared towards commercial. So yes, for-profits and nonprofits apply.
Thank you.
So this
you
would
may
be
have said that, but it may have just got past me. Okay, that's cool. And my last thing is maybe just a suggestion. Business improvements. When I was my thinking about what that could mean was just so broad. I think you should reconsider what we call it to really help people understand this is physical improvements to the structure. Because I started thinking about like, okay, maybe people need technical assistance. Maybe people need funding. There's all these like soft skills and assistance that goes with business improvements. You might want to consider making sure that people understand that it's going to be physical improvements to structure.
So I do appreciate your comment there for the name. The program itself does very specifically call out what is qualifying improvements. Because as you noticed, this presentation was a bit long. I was not able to include everything in there, but I do have a very detailed description of what does qualify for business improvements.
Understood. But I'm saying, like, if somebody just looks at that title and they don't take the time to read your description, they're not going to entertain it. They may not entertain it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the comment. If that is an issue, hopefully we'll be able to resolve that.
All right, and thanks again for your presentation. Great job.
Thank you.
I don't see any other, Mr. Palmer. Almost made it.
Almost. Well, I was gonna, this isn't a question. I think I know where you're going with this or whatever. Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to approve it.
Second.
I think, yeah, as presented. I do think the note on the name, it would be worth looking at, but I think the majority of the program as is, I think really is a solid thing. But
can we have a second?
Michael, would you entertain a friendly amendment to having the name reconsidered as Member Mitchell's recommendation, because I do think that's there is some validity to that.
I don't know how to incorporate that. I am open to doing that, but I don't want to. My only concern is I think they've done such a good job with the rest of the program. I personally don't want to step on their toes with the name. But you know, if there is some way to amend it so that, you know, or just we ask them to see what other see if they come up with any other clever name that fits in there that might be a little more clear, then I'd be open to that.
Well,
I don't know how to say that as an amendment.
The way that it would be done is if I guess Member Mitchell or whoever wants to make an amendment, you can either accept it or not accept it.
If I could make just a quick comment on that, we are happy to take into consideration potential name changes. In order to meet deadlines, if we're going to be able to present this to the City Commission on November 5th, we have to have the packet uploaded tomorrow. That is our deadline in order to meet the City Commission meeting for November 5th. So,
okay, point of information. So, Mr. Blumberg, if I'm understanding, this was presented to us. How long have you all had this? Was this change made or this done?
how long have we been working on this? We have been working on this, I would have to say a good piece of this fiscal year so far to actually get it to this stage to be able to present to you. We had attempted to present previously, but due to scheduling issues, we had a lot of other pieces that went to the board, and so this one got pushed back.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I guess my concern would be is there's going to be a lot of other things that come before us, and if it's not just this one where we are given kind of a time frame where, hey, we got to unpack this and it's got to be presented like next meeting, that's kind of putting us behind an 8 ball too. I mean, and all of us have been. I understand, I get it. There's some one-offs, but there's going to be other things that come that are equally important, and this isn't one of them I want to have that discussion on. But just for future reference, I mean, that just doesn't even, I don't know.
I think everyone is trying to meet the time constraints that we all have. It's been a different last 6 months than we're used to.
Yeah.
If this board wants to forsake this program because of a naming opportunity, then we can do that. If not, then I suggest we proceed.
I think I'd like to, just for the sake of being on this, I think I'd like to hold it with the name as is. I think they can, you know, go back and if people are getting confused, I think they can go back and rename the program down the road if they would like. But
right.
I'd like to keep the motion to approve the business improvement grant program as presented.
It's already been seconded, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
before we go
just
any
on a
further,
note
Ms. Lopez, do we need to have public comment?
Mr. Chair, I wanted to make another comment.
Okay.
I didn't have my hand raised, but we were in discussion.
Mr. Palmer, thank you. No, who
that's
is this?
Mr. Mitchell.
That was
I don't
me.
see the hand raised. All right.
I'm sorry, but we were in discussion about the name change, and I just wanted to second what Mr. Grundy had mentioned, that, I mean, going forward, you know, if we had considerable issues with this particular proposal, you know, it's not good that we just have a do or die, you know, and so I think it's good for us to maintain the integrity of our decision making and not being rushed to decisions, that we make sure that this situation doesn't happen. It's just so, I mean, it just so happens that the job that he's done on this is so well that issue is minute. You know, it's a moot. It's been made moot, even though I think there is some, like I said, there is some validity to my points. But just going forward, I would like to encourage the staff to give us time, ample amount of time to make decisions on important issues like this program.
So I do want to say, I would like to thank you again for that. I do want to point out that and one of the key changes in the program itself, under the program revisions I mentioned while going through this, allows for the city manager to approve de minimis changes that don't involve grant dollar amounts or program geographical areas, including target corridors. So if the name does need to be changed at some point, that is something that can be done.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
I think I'll reiterate to staff that I don't believe, listening to members of the board, that the issue of the name is in particular a significant problem, but they do want to make sure that they're not jammed up against a deadline and forced into having to approve something that you know, is if they fail it, then it has to go back through another 6 months of review. And I'll tell this board, you know, that's our job. If it comes down to that and we can't afford to, and we can't come to agreement or approve it, then that's what we do. So I have a motion on the board. I'm going to get to you, Mr. Manager, just a second. I've got a motion and I got a second. Can I clarify whether we have public comment?
We do
Ms.
not have
Lopez?
public comment.
Okay, Mr. Manager, what would you like to say?
I just wanted to reiterate that it's not our intent to ever put the advisory board up against the deadline. If you have issues, we certainly don't need to, you know, have it on a specific date to the commission. In this particular program, you know, our purpose is to get the program approved so we can get the money out into the community. So that's the only, you know, time-sensitive piece of this. So if the discussion was that you had issues with this and took exception to some pieces that could not be corrected de minimis, we would certainly have heeded the board's advice and not moved the item forward.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Gomez, you have a comment?
Yeah, and Mr. Manager, I appreciate that clarity. And I don't think any of us were meaning, and that wasn't an aspersion at Mr. Blumberg either. Staff did a phenomenal job on this, and we just want to make sure going forward, because we're going to have a lot of tandem-out projects coming before us. We just want to make sure we're given deference and the ability to look at everything in perpetuity, because I promise you, if it's not this one, it'll be something else. But I don't think any of us think that there was anything nefarious or any of that. I was just making clarity. So if staff knows the support staff as well as what they're doing, and I appreciate y'all's efforts. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to imply that you all thought that there was anything nefarious going on. I just wanted to let you know my policy is if there were issues, we would not be jamming it down anybody's throat.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. We have no public comment. I see no further hands raised by board members. Do we need a roll call vote?
Yes.
All right, please proceed.
Okay, Lane Abraben,
Aye.
Kelly Blount,
Aye.
Carrie Bush,
Aye.
Linda Dixon,
Aye.
Evelyn Fox,
Aye.
Armando Grundy Gomez,
Aye.
Heidi,
Aye.
Christopher Merritt,
Aye.
Jason Mitchell,
Aye.
Warren Nielsen,
Good night.
Michael Palmer,
Somebody mute the phone, please.
Oh, that's mine.
Member Fox, please mute the phone.
I'm trying.
Thank you, ma'am.
Michael Palmer,
Aye.
Bradley Pollitt,
Aye.
and Jessica Turner Evans.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We also have a member of the public who would like to comment now.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Johnson, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to comment that as a business member of the community and as someone that has utilized funds from the CRA in the past, I don't really see a problem with the name. It's self-explanatory. And then the presentation was presented so well that someone that goes in and reads up on it you can actually see that, because I have a building that I took advantage of the paint program a number of years back, probably about 10 years ago. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't see a issue with the name because it's pretty much self-explanatory. And I'm a citizen that has many clients that are business owners also. So I put it out there a lot that, you know, that there's government money available through the CRA. And so everybody that I explain it to pretty much understands. So it's not that a name is not really going to make a difference, because once you call the CRA or whoever you have to call to get into contact with to figure out what money is available, what grants are available at the time, they usually are very informative and they pretty much explain. I've called in the past, said, you know, are there any grants available right now? And they always tell me what's available, what's not available. It's never been anything with like the infrastructure of your business, or it's always with a building. It's always with your property or your building itself, your property. So I personally, I know I'm just a citizen, but I personally think that the name is fine. It's self-explanatory.
Thank you, ma'am, for your comments. And it's good to know from someone who has participated in the program. And we appreciate the segue into the next item, the neighborhood paint program. Ms. Bakathis is going to show it.
Hello, welcome everybody. Let me do a quick screen share. All right, well again, my name is Chelsea Bakathis. Thanks for the introduction. I want to talk a little bit about my background. So when I was asked to work on the neighborhood paint program, I was pretty excited. I have my professional background is in administering grants. So I've worked for an agency where I administered FEMA grants, FHWA mobility grants, HUD CDBG grants. I've even had the opportunity to create a business facade grant program similar to the one Daniel has created. I'd also like to thank Daniel for all the input he's given me on the creation of this program. He has administered the residential paint voucher program for the past 2 years. A lot of his input and how it was administered and what he had heard from the public and applicants went into the policy changes we made on this program. All right, so why the update? First, when we consolidated the districts, we needed to go in and consolidate the districts, consolidate the programs for one district. We updated to increase accessibility for all users, and we updated the program to concentrate the geographic impact to make the program have kind of a bigger to it. Past program was pretty successful. We, let's see, since 2013, we've painted 59 homes, and actually since 2018, the past 2 years, we've had the opportunity to paint 28 homes. So a lot of those homes have been painted recently. This first example is from the 5th Avenue Pleasant Street. It was done in 2016. The second example was done in downtown and was done in 2018. And this third example, I really like this because it shows the impact just a little bit of paint can have on a home. And if you imagine this home in the context of a neighborhood and how this just kind of beautifies the streets, I think this is a good example. This home was in the East Side and it was done in 2014. Now I'll talk a little bit about the program revisions. The first program revision, the name was changed from Residential Paint Voucher Program to Neighborhood Paint Program. This is because the new scope of the program is broader. We're not thinking in terms of improving individual houses here and there. We're thinking of improving neighborhoods as a whole to create neighborhood stability. The next thing that changed was the area. Obviously, we had 3 programs before we consolidated our district, and there was only 3 districts that were included within those programs. But now we've created 1 program for the whole district. The third revision was what the program actually offers. So the former program offered a $500 paint voucher and a $250 pressure wash. under the new program, we are now going to just pay for everything. We're going to be paying for labor and material cost, and the estimated of that would be about $2,000 per home. This may seem like more, but we believe that we will be able to actually enable people to get their homes painted quicker and thus completing more homes. I estimate that we'll be able to get about 35 homes in a year completed under the new way the new way the program is structured. Under the former program, people had to perform their own painting labor, and oftentimes that was difficult for people with disabilities or people who were elderly or just couldn't take off of work. And so a lot of times people would just sit on the voucher. We might have the voucher for them, or they might sit on the application, and it would just take forever to get a lot of these homes completed. So we hope that the new program offerings will allow homes to be painted sooner and just create more efficiency in the program as a whole. The fourth revision was to concentrate geographical impact. Before, the program could be if your house is located anywhere in the districts, you could have it painted. And now we're focusing on the lowest median we're focusing on neighborhoods where the homes are below the area median income, and we're going to be targeting neighborhoods by application cycle. An example of this was actually under the former program. There was a block in Duval who had a paint party. They had a bounce house, they had childcare, and they painted about 7 houses on a street in, I think, a matter of a weekend or 2 weekends. Everyone came out in the neighborhood and painted each other's homes. This is just a very efficient way to create a huge impact on a single street, and it's a very, I think, visible example of what the paint program can accomplish. So these would be the eligible neighborhoods: the Greater Duval neighborhood, Spring Hill, Sugar Hill, Borders, Pleasant Street, Fifth Avenue. I'm sorry, I got a message. I was making sure it wasn't related to this presentation. We would be starting with one neighborhood at a time, and for example, do it in a matter of a few months. See how many houses we can get in a matter of 3 months, for example. We're still figuring out the specifics of that. We'll probably do it, play it by ear as we go to see what interest is. So we would start in the Greater Duval neighborhood and work our way south to Sugar Hill, Spring Hill, and then move on east and north to Fifth Avenue and Pleasant Street. The final 2 major revisions were made was first, under the former program, people were always eligible to reapply. Thankfully, no one really took advantage of that. It's not like we had people applying year after year, but just to kind of tighten up the policy, we made it so people could not reapply for 5 years under the program after they had received their house. The second revision was under the former program. It was required that an easement be taken out on the home. The idea behind this was so that we could protect our interests, but the contract that the applicant has to sign with the city, the agreement, is binding. And so we took off this easement requirement as it was cumbersome to the process. All right, so I've taken some time to explain to you the revisions we've made to the paint program and why we're doing it. And my recommendation is to approve the neighborhood paint program guidelines application as presented. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I do.
I've got first hand up was Ms. Evans.
Hey, Chelsea, thank you for the presentation. I have just a quick question, just for clarity. So are homeowners still eligible to apply for the program, or do they have to wait until their entire neighborhood is kind of up for the painting process?
They have to wait until their neighborhood is up.
Okay, and you said you're kind of doing that in sequence, starting in certain neighborhoods first?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and my last question is, if I wonder what that timeline looks like. So if there is someone who has more of an urgent need, let's just say in Pleasant Street, but you started in a different area of the community, would there be a wait list for them, or just still a general application cycle, or would you just still be kind of focusing on, let's go to this neighborhood, then the next and the next?
I think there's potential for creating a list of people in the neighborhoods who are moving towards. I mean, they obviously wouldn't be able to get help until we move to their neighborhood, but right now, for instance, we do have a wait list of people, and I would assume we'll be extending that process. And I think that's a really good point.
Okay, thank you.
Member Blount?
Thank you. I wondered if the 5-year holdout period, the original thinking behind that was just that a paint job well done should not have to be repeated before 5 years.
Yes, and that's another reason why we did it. So people, if they change their mind on the color, they couldn't apply for another grant to change. If I understand your question right.
All right, Mr. Gomez.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I guess I'm going to take it from a different point of view. Chelsea, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and if you can't, either the manager or Ms. Bowie. First of all, what is going to be the rate of return on this program? Chelsea, do you have a response for that for us?
Are you talking about rate of return as in?
Return on investment for this program.
So the property,
what are you projecting?
So how much money we're putting in, are you asking how much money we're going to be getting back from?
Okay, so we're going to expend dollars out of our budget as a GCRA to this program to paint houses or paint whatever. There's got to be we're investing dollars into paint. What is going to be the return on those dollars?
Oh, my definition of a return is a stable community where people are able to maintain their homes and thus increase the length of the house and people able to live in their home. And since my estimate is that we can have about 35 homes in a year. So if you take 35 times 9, I mean, I think there's a pretty good rate on investment.
Okay, so let me since you quantified it with stable neighborhoods, let me reframe this a little bit.
Okay.
See, when we had the East Side community, or the East Side board, you know what our rate of return on this was? Do you know? I'll tell you. We had 0.8%. 0.8% of a return. Chelsea, here's the concern. I'm saying this. We're expending these dollars, and I'm not that it's not a laudable program, and not that it's not a good program, but when you compare and contrast this to other things that the CRA did and has done in other communities, talking about stability, putting painting on houses when communities have food deserts, putting paint on houses when communities need real economic development. This is not. I'm looking at return on investment where people can touch, see, and feel outside of saying how my house looks pretty. But guess what? I remember at the beginning of this conversation, myself, Member Dixon, Member Bush, we were talking about not wanting this program from the jump street when we had this conversation. So I'm a little surprised that it's back. And I guess my question to the manager would be this. I don't feel that this is a good use of our dollars as a GCRA when this could be dollars coming out of housing or coming out of general fund budget. We're in the business of helping to take areas of blight and poverty and turn them into something. We are looking at economic investment. And that's not, again, an aspersion at you personally, just saying that what this program became known for was, it's kind of like, I look at it as a bane. Member Mitchell can relate to this because when he was on our board, it was kind of like the bane. Everybody looked at it. We have a paint program. Everybody else is getting things like Innovation Square. Well, we got a paint program. And we wonder why we have $800,000. And so when I ask you what's our return on investment, the answer I get, which is what I was not looking for, and I guarantee you, if the city commission asks the manager what's a return on investment, and he tells them it's neighborhood stability, that's just not the answer we're looking for.
Well, I have 2 things to say about that. So first of all, the GCRA's new mission is not to increase property values. It is to enhance the community. The second part is I'm really glad you brought up, because this is why we reframed what the program is actually offering. I mean, under the former program, we weren't able to get a lot of houses done. Now that we are focusing geographical impact, I really believe that you will see a much bigger. And I also want to remind you that we're only spending $72,000 on this program compared to the amount of money many of our projects are this is kind of a complementary to the community enhancement goal and objectives that we have in the plan.
Yeah, but Chelsea, it's $72,000. We're not talking about, you're right, we're not in the business of increasing property values, but you know what? Tell that to the folks where we can see economic development in other communities, because this is a tale of two cities. Tell that to our urban core. Tell that to where our mission has been. We weren't in the mission of increasing property values and transmogrified communities unless it was in certain communities. And I guess for me is, if this is the best we can get is a paint program for this, that's just not the answer that I'm looking for. So it comes back, this is not you, and I get this is not even really at you, Chelsea, it's more toward the manager or whoever else. I
Mr.
guess
Gomez, the manager's got his hands up. Perhaps he'll answer
yeah,
your
but hold on,
question.
Mr. Chair, we did away with this at the very beginning prior to this, and I think somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I remember this was something that we had at the very beginning of it, but I'll listen to the manager.
So if the commission does ask me what the return on investment is, I would tell them that it is neighborhood stabilization, because blight in a neighborhood will have a detrimental effect on the economic development that will surround it. But I do want to point out that there are three elements to the plan. There's economic development, there's community enhancement and housing, and there's public space and streetscape. And so not every program that is undertaken by the city through the GCRA department is going to be economic development. Part of it is, how do we stabilize the neighborhoods where we can have good quality housing that will ultimately provide good opportunities for to grow a workforce that will help feed into our economic development. So this is all pieces of a puzzle that go together. And with regard to, you know, housing money such as SHIP or CDBG, we do use those for these types of purposes too. And we have areas of the city that are outside of the CRA boundaries that need attention as well. And just, I know the board is aware of this, but at this point, the way the CRA is structured, it is general fund money that is going in, and it's county general fund money that is going into the special revenue fund to fund programs. So, I mean, we could debate this long and hard, but I think that, you know, ultimately the paint program was talked about, was presented as part of the plan, and that's why we continue to work on it. So,
Mr. Manager, so my question would be to you is, because it just seems like we're taking many iterations of what we were supposed to do, and we're going into housing, and we have a housing department. I just feel like this board is becoming almost like a rubber stamp to use dollars, where we're forgetting what we promised and signed an agreement with the county to do, which was to have real transformative change in areas of economic blight. And I'm not going to get into a tit for tat either, Mr. Manager, but at the same token, if you're going to sit here and look me in the eye and tell me that when we ride down Southwest 2nd Avenue, where we've had economic development and change, which was CRA dollars, CRA seated, you go down parts of 5th Avenue, and then you go over to Greater Duval, or hell, anywhere and over in my neighborhood, and you want to tell me that that's neighborhood stabilization and that's impact? It's a tale of two cities, and I'm calling. It seems like the goalpost has moved and has changed, and I would like to know why, because it doesn't make sense to me.
well, I'm not sure I agree that the goalpost has changed. I think the idea of using dollars to stabilize neighborhoods in this fashion has always been a goal of the CRA. If I missed, you know, the boat on that one, you know, certainly I would stand corrected, but neighborhood stabilization is critical to any sort of economic development that's going to occur. The two go hand in hand on there. And yes, we do have a housing program that is funded through inadequate federal dollars and inadequate state dollars to meet the mission. We've got, you know, our housing program is going to be putting the money into Heartwood, to assist with the subsidization for the affordable housing pieces. So there's only so many dollars to go around. So I mean, again, the board certainly can take a position that they don't support the paint program, and we will take that to the commission when we present it. But again, maybe I'm missing something, but paint program and neighborhood stabilization has always been part of the CRA's mission.
Mr. Chair, point of information.
Okay.
I recall, and if maybe Member Dixon or Member Bush or somebody, I recall us having this discussion. I want to be very clear to the board. I am not against the paint program. I remember we were talking about projects of what we were doing in regards to importance and listing them. This was at the very beginning, and I can go back and look at my notes because I have them. But this was where, and if one of my colleagues will want to correct me, I remember us having a very big conversation about this, and this was not something that we wanted to do. I do say I do support the paint program. I'm just not sure that I support it as a GCRA project and it should be used in another department, but I'm happy to go along with the board. I'm not, again, like you said earlier, Mr. Chair, either way, are we going to get hung up on this? No, but it's going to be something, it's going to be small stuff, and it's still going to take away from what the mission of what we did when we're trying to do. We voted to do big projects before this entire nonsense of COVID-19 happened, and it just seems like we're getting away from that. And I don't know why, but it is what it is. I just don't want us to lose track, and it seems like we are. I don't know why, but it just seems like every time it's a surprise. If somebody wants to correct me and say that I'm wrong, I happily will stand be wrong.
So we have another Mr. Mitchell. Member Mitchell had a comment. You still have a
I would
comment?
like to respect Member Blount. I think he had his hand up first if he would like to respond, but if not, I will go ahead.
I'm kind of going down the list on my screen. Why don't you go ahead and then I'll go back to Member Blount.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I get it. Thank you, Chelsea, for the presentation, for the work. Just in the fact that you said neighborhood, I saw that y'all were looking at it from a collective standpoint and not just individuals, trying to bring people together, bring a sense of engagement and pride in their space to be able to work together and just kind of really generate a positive spirit and energy there. I get that. And also, Mr. Feldman, I saw it too as a part of community enhancement. I was going to make a mention of that it falls under that. And I agree with you. It is a piece of the puzzle. You know, these things are a piece of a big puzzle. Economic development has a lot of factors. You know, there are people involved, and how people feel about themselves and their community is important. You know, and I get Member Grundy, and I remember the Eastside Development conversations about dollars, and that's what we've been lacking: economic revenue. And I think I want to kind of maybe bridge these things in terms of concern, is that we don't want to get years down the line like we have in so many cases with works that have been talked about and doing things east side, and then all we have are these pocket shots of things that we've done, and then we're staring at graphs and pictures of what's happened over the years with much rhetoric to have a negative 2% tax revenue. That's why we're stressing the thing about priority of big projects. I'm in support of the paint program because I respect the idea of community economic development having many pieces and facets. I just want to voice to Mr. Feldman that the sharing of dollars amongst different programs are going to make me more agreeable to it. But if it's just us carrying the weight of the paint program, I'm not really in favor. I just want to make sure that the city and all its major departments, that there's shared dollars in this. And because I don't want to get to the point to where we're talking about doing something big and then we've spent so much money on the paint program that it takes away for significantly from what we're trying to do down the road, which takes a lot of planning, and I respect that. But and it's like we need traction, and we need updates on what's going on in terms of moving that big project every time we meet. I think that would make me feel better about the things that we're spending on and what we're doing now. Like whenever we meet, Mr. Feldman, we need an update on what are we doing with the big projects? What's the talk? What's the what actions have been taken? You know, and how that's going along, because that would make me reassured that our eye is on the ball and that we're trying to move things further down the end zone. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Mitchell. Member Dixon.
Hi, I'll be quick. I will support this program. I remember the discussions that Member Gomez is referring to, and we did talk a lot about wanting to really do those impactful projects. But I think, you know, we need to create this program. It did end up in the plan. I think what they've outlined is a good way to structure the program. And we can look at the funding levels year to year and decide what kind of a priority it is. I think right now the 72,000 is not a huge commitment for starting out.
Thank you, Member Dixon. I've got a couple of hands still up. Mr. Gomez and Mr. Mitchell. Okay, you're taking them down now. Got it. Just want to make sure I've covered everybody.
I put mine back up.
Oh, you did? Okay. Then go at it.
I think Member Blount was before me.
He put his hand down.
Okay, never mind. Mr. Manager, in the spirit of congeniality with everybody, it's not that I am against the program. I just want to see the forest through the trees and have the impact and meaningful change that people can really see as well. And Chelsea, I've talked with Chelsea plenty of times, and Chelsea knows I think very highly of her and all staff. So it's just that when we have these conversations, I want us to have an impactful change, but I also have to understand as well what we've been dealing with the last 9 months. And so we're trying to play catch up. So I got to keep reminding myself of that. So in no way is that in the spirit. I get what you're saying. Neighborhood stabilization, Mr. Manager, I completely agree with you that it is important. I just also see people that have had the rugs pulled out from them historically in communities that we're trying to target, like our urban core and like the eastern part of our city, have been historically at a set aside and at a disadvantage. And they want to see some impactful change as well, like we see along Southwest 2nd Avenue. That's all I was saying, Mr. Manager. That's all.
And I clearly understand that. I think, you know, to put this as Member Dixon alluded to, we're talking about 1% of the GCRA department's annual budget. So we're not talking about diverting a lot of resources.
Thank you both. Thank you all for the comments. I do want to reiterate what I heard was that it's important to this board that we keep our eyes on the major issues that this board has to deal with. And if we can continually come back and update, even in a short format, at our meetings about where we are in progress on some of the larger issues and projects going forward and our goals, that will be helpful to put all this other stuff in context. I don't see any other comments by the board. Do we have any public comment?
We don't have any public comment.
Okay. Could I get a motion to approve the neighborhood paint program guidelines and application as presented?
I move the approval of staff's recommendation.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we need a roll call vote.
Okay, Lena Braven. Cully Blount.
Yes.
Carrie Bush. Is Carrie still here, Bush?
I said aye.
Oh, okay, thank you. Linda Dixon.
Aye.
Evelyn Fox,
Aye.
Armando Grandi Gomez,
Aye.
Jacob Eide,
Aye.
Christopher Merritt,
Aye.
Jason Mitchell,
Aye.
Warren Nielsen,
Aye.
Michael Palmer, I believe he's left, Chair Pollitt,
Aye.
and Jessica Turner Evans.
Aye.
All right, it sounds as if the motion passed. Our next item is old business, infill housing opportunities. Who is presenting this?
Good evening.
Our director. Good evening.
So Daniel's going to bring the presentation up real quick, but this is something that you heard 2 months ago regarding an opportunity in the Duval neighborhood. We'll go to the next slide. So just a refresher, these are the lots that are available for donation, and this is a housing and community development initiative that will come out as a solicitation for groups to respond to in order to redevelop these lots into single family housing. It'll be 12 total in a 6-block area. Next slide. So again, this was the fiscal note that we had last time. Public Works Department was nice enough to work with us on coming up with cost estimating, and if their construction crews can handle it, it looks like we can handle things in-house, which would also save us money, but the not to exceed amount would include the acquisition, engineering, and permitting and construction. Next slide. Just to reiterate again, this falls under our community enhancement and housing portion of our reinvestment roadmap and in our plan. And just to kind of add to what the city manager said earlier, we have, economic development, community enhancements and housing, and public space and streetscape. And one of the reasons why we've come back so quickly with the programs is that they were so popular, and we actually heard from the commission that they were very interested in us getting those programs back out soon because people were inquiring about them, and we had a huge waiting list. And that is one of the things that we were able to move forward fairly quickly since we had so many years of experience implementing those programs. So I just wanted to mention that as an aside. But we do have this affordable housing and goal within our plan now, and it talks about us acting as a developer, which we've done before, talks about us coordinating with the private sector, and then also potentially with government agencies or other departments. So this is a request that actually came from Housing and Community Development for assistance so that the work could be done and free up all the lots for redevelopment. Next slide. Okay, you can move forward. Thank you. So there were some questions at the August meeting. I just wanted to review really quick the funding that's set aside. So we have some downtown TIF that is going towards our Porter's neighborhood project. So Chelsea, I think it was, I'm losing track of meetings, but probably 2 meetings ago, spoke about those 2 opportunities that we're hoping to move forward that are both priorities and also included in the action agenda. And there is new money, so the GCRA funding available, $108,000 from last fiscal year, and then as of October 1st, we're now in fiscal year 21, where there was an additional $400,000 budgeted towards these efforts. Next slide. So again, this goes back to the description and gives you an idea of kind of how it links to other projects. The Greater Duval neighborhood is one of our priority neighborhoods as outlined in the plan, and what specifically for housing. And then also it's noted here that in the city's action agenda, of course, it falls under their affordable housing strategy as well. So we'd be helping make this opportunity available. Next slide. So other eligible projects, the only ones on our roadmap so far are Pleasant Street and Porter's neighborhood opportunities for infill housing. But we are currently working with the Affordable Housing Working Group, and there are some requests from the Commission for other programs that would help solve some of the issues that our community is facing. For instance, the heirs property issues that we see throughout the community. And so we'll be coming back with more proposed programs that will help kind of build our projects and programs around attainable housing. And so what we're trying to do is kind of one at a time bring them forward for your consideration. Next slide. Oh, that was it. So the recommendations the same as last time. If there are any questions, I'm available. Also, we have, and I want to thank some of our department heads and friends from other city departments that are on the line in case there are technical questions. Thank you for sticking around. I know it's been a lengthy meeting, so I was trying to make it short. But if you have any questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vidal. Any board member questions or comments? See Mr. Blunt waving his hand, but I don't see your hand up, but go for
it. Okay. I want to find out along Northeast 9th Avenue, will any of these improvements involve taking active use of right-of-way that is now being used as elements of front yard by residents along that road?
I do not know the answer to that question. I'm not sure if one of our partners can chime in, but I could circle back with that answer.
Let me take a closer look
okay.
at the mapping, and I'll answer that in just a second.
Okay, while you're doing that, we'll go to Mr. Gomez.
Sarah, I have a question for you. I see there's a lot of emphasis being placed on Greater Duval, and I'm seeing a lot of that word transforming. Can you give any examples, or if there are any plans and for areas like Lincoln Heights in the southeastern part of the city, or where other than just outside of Greater Duval? Because it seems like we just go there. It's like the low-hanging fruit. We go, everything is the Greater Duval, which is fine. But what about Lincoln Heights and some of Spring Hill, Sugar? There's lots of areas.
Yeah.
So
about. I think I would answer that by saying, Armando, that we have a layered approach. You know, you just heard about 2 programs that can impact many different neighborhoods. This is a specific funding opportunity that would take a little bit of CRA funding and help leverage, 12 new homes to affordable housing. And so we always look for, different ways that we can leverage CRA funding for a bigger impact. If something came, to us in one of those neighborhoods, we'd certainly present it. And those neighborhoods are also priority, as you saw with the former program that Chelsea presented, and kind of how we're going to move through them. I think that some of the additional programs we'll come back with will have an impact on a lot of those neighborhoods as well, because I don't know if any of you saw the presentation that Andrew Persons gave at the last City Commission meeting on the moratorium, but there was a lot of really great data about, how many homes are dealing with heirs property, issues potentially, how many haven't had electricity in the past 30 days. And, there's a lot of information gathering that's going on right now. And so I think that will help us hone in on these future programs that we have and where the need is greatest. I don't know if we gave Brian enough time to get the answer.
Yeah, do we have an answer to Member Blount's right-of-way question?
Good evening, Brian Singleton, Acting Public Works Director. Without doing a detailed survey, it's hard for me to say with 100% confidence, but there does not appear to be any encroachments into the existing right-of-way. If there were any encroachments, we would definitely assist those property owners with relocating the fencing.
All right, I see Member Dick, well, Member Blount, you probably have a response to that, and then I'll go to Member Dixon.
I would like to explain why I bring that up. I've had a lot of study of urban development, and the pattern of urban development in this country over a long time, I'm talking about since the late 1800s, has been that certain populations get moved around to suit the whims of others. And I just want to make sure that's not happening in things that we do going forward. I see that happening now in Fifth Avenue neighborhood with a 1,000 student complex about to replace what was once affordable housing for low-income families. And I know that it was CRA that originally inflated the ball for that game of gentrification some 18 years ago with University House. I witnessed that myself, how in this country, Black populations have gotten hold of the housing when it's old and get shifted around when it suits the whims of others, who find out, oh, suddenly this area looks great, or suddenly we can do this with it. And these things are just done regardless of their impact on the voiceless, lowest income people. And I don't want us to, I want to make sure we don't do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Blount. Member Dixon.
I just wanted to respond, and it won't be a great answer, but I just wanted to share with you back in August when we first had this on the agenda, I spent a good amount of time on Google Maps and virtually drove the neighborhood anyway, and even looked at where I could up each one of those kind of what were alleyways, or in some cases they were sort of dirt roads that went back between the houses. If I remember right, I only noticed maybe one or two where it looked like the homeowner was maybe using a lot of the side yard. It wasn't a front yard issue, but it did seem like, you know, there were a couple I noticed where I thought, oh, you know, that person's going to really, you know, feel that impact when a road comes through next to their house. But for the most part, there was even some stretches where it's already a dirt road that people drive up and down between the houses. And so for the most part, I felt like it would be, you know, probably seen as an enhancement to those existing houses. But there were a couple that the side yards looked like the people were maybe, you know, using some of that vacant land as if it were their side yard.
Thank you, Member Dixon. Any other board member comment or questions? Do we have any public comment or questions? I don't hear anything from staff, so I take that as a no.
Sorry, no, we don't have any public comment.
So do we hear a motion for any type of approval?
So move to move staff recommendation.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Oh, sorry, who was that Member Mitchell who seconded?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, you want to take the roll call vote?
Mm-hmm. Lane Abraben? Believe, okay. No, Lane Abraben. Kali Blount?
I'll have to say no.
Okay. Carrie Bush?
Aye.
Linda Dixon?
Aye.
Evelyn Fox? Okay. Armando Grandi Gomez?
Aye.
Jacob Eide?
No.
Christopher Merritt?
Aye.
Jason Mitchell?
Aye.
Warren Nielsen?
Aye.
Michael Palmer? Bradley Pollitt?
Aye.
And Jessica Turner Evans?
Aye.
Okay. We have 2 nay and 2. 8, yes.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank everyone for their comment. It was good. It was a good discussion. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any of that? Ms. Lopez?
Forgot to unmute. We do not.
Okay, very good. Under member comment, Member Nielsen had something he wanted to bring up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 quick items I just want to get. We've had a long meeting, so I'm not going to belabor this. The first thing, I was talking to some folks on the Gainesville Citizens for Active Transportation, and they're really interested in pursuing and encouraging the Infinity Trail. And they seem to believe strongly that there's some good opportunities coming our way in the short term, and part of those opportunities may lie within the GCRA footprint. So what I would like to suggest is that we have, let's say, not necessarily next month, but maybe for December's meeting, we ask staff to come forward with about a 10-minute presentation of the status of the Infinity Trail, and hopefully they would be collaborating or at least consulting with some of the ideas that the GCAT folks are up to. So I would ask if we could consider having staff put that on the agenda for about a 10-minute presentation in December.
Okay. Is there another item?
Yes.
I guess I should say staff. Did you get that?
Yes, I got it.
I thought so. Thank you.
Member Nielsen?
Okay. I'm sorry.
Member Nielsen, you had something else, right?
Yes, yes. One more thing. It's interesting. There's a difference between strategy and tactics. And this board is a 15-member board, and we have good discussions, and they're overarching. And they're talking about overarching strategies. But actually getting things done involve tactics, and that means getting under the hood a bit more. And I was kind of concerned about that because I think we all agree we've got a lot of opportunities coming up within the next short term, next couple of years, that we have to do some really good decision making about. And I ran into the city manager. I asked him about that. We were talking about it, and he had some ideas that maybe we could parse out some of our chores on this committee as different teams, and perhaps then come back as a whole and share the results of those team efforts. And I would ask, it's maybe late now, gosh, it's 8:35, that the city manager might comment about some of those things that we might be able to do to get this ball rolling.
With respect to what?
Excuse me? I'm not here.
I don't hear anybody.
No, I was asking with point of information for 2 things, Mr. Chair.
Oh, hold on. I'm trying to get the manager to understand Mr. Nielsen's question. So, Mr. Nielsen was asking about the conversation that had taken place about breaking into some subcommittees to help address some things in more detail, if I understood that correctly.
Yeah, that's generally it. Let's so that we could parse ourselves out and then come back as a whole and share the fruits of those more intensive efforts.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Nielsen, the thought I had is you have a relatively large group, and we're going to have to start meeting in person as well, starting November 1st, or at least that's the latest word. So if you wanted to get more involved in the discussions from a tactics standpoint on there, one thing to consider, and as I pointed out in some previous comments, you have 3 different sections of the plan: economic development, community redevelopment, public places. Is that potentially, split yourself into 3 groups that are concentrating on those, have more in-depth, detailed discussions, and then come back periodically as a 15-member board to report out and to make recommendations on to the commission with regard to that. I think, from that standpoint, we may be able to get more conversations going in the same period of time to keep the ball rolling on things. Just my thoughts.
So, Mr. Manager, if individual members had thoughts on that, would they get in touch with Ms. Vidal and share that information? Or what is your recommendation?
Or discuss it, if you wanted to discuss it at a future meeting or tonight or all. But I think really the board would have to come to some governance structure to make it make the operation a little bit more, I'll call it efficient. On here, we heard the discussions today. There was a lot of discussion around several items on there that maybe could have been vetted out a little bit more in the subcommittee type of format.
Okay, I'm going to go up. I'm going to start at the top of my hand raised list. Member Dixon, and then Member Gomez.
Sorry, I just forgot to take it down.
Okay, Member Gomez.
My concern about this is it leads back to we as a board. To me, when I'm hearing from the manager, it almost sounds like a divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. I get the efficiency thing. There has to be some semblance of trust. And I'm sorry, but dividing up into subcommittees, we always have to end up voting as one body and voice as one body. So no matter if it's subgroups or subcommittees, we can have subcommittees, but we still need to meet as one body. And to divide us up into this group or that group, that's not what this board was constituted for. And Mr. Chair, you weren't here. I don't know if you were here at the last meeting. We had the joint meeting. This harkens back to semblance of trust. When we have things that people don't know about, offices people don't know about, Mr. Manager, I get it that you had a conversation with Member Nielsen and things don't go certain ways, or you're not comfortable with talking with certain personalities. We all are on this board, have opinions. We all talk about them. As far as efficiency, you have a very bright group of people. I'm confident in their abilities to every one of us to do an efficient job. As far as farming out a subcommittee, to me, Mr. Chair, it's a thing of trust. And anything that's going to come up with having a lack of trust in the community, to where, because I'm gonna tell you what looking at the forest through the trees, how this harkens out. I don't want our board to be a rubber stamp for just a piggy bank. This is not a piggy bank organization or group. The CRA, we are tasked to do some very big things. We made promises to the public, Mr. Chair, and it just seems like some people want to have ulterior motives and an agenda. I am not going to talk about what the motivations are of people's conversation. I wasn't there. I'm just relating it to what I've heard. Member Nielsen also brought up the Infinity Trail. Let me remind Member Nielsen that it was several meetings ago, staff was supposed to bring back the Infinity Loop anyway. The Infinity Loop was supposed to come back from staff, and we did have that conversation. So I'm not sure what's so different on what you're pushing for, Member Nielsen, but we had it, and I believe Mr. Gill, if Daniel Gill is on this line, presented it to us. So what's the difference? Because it was supposed to be a synergistic project with a lot of things that we have going on, because we want it as a big project. So can you help me understand, Member Nielsen, what's different in what you're wanting as far as the Infinity Loop and what we as a board, when we voted on it, is doing? Because I'm confused, really confused.
I think I would, he asked staff to bring something back at the next meeting. Perhaps we can have a presentation there and have a broader discussion.
Yeah,
Does that work?
Well, but that's just my point. We did have that discussion, and they were bringing it back, and we did have a vote in February to have more brought back about the Infinity Loop. I specifically recall that because myself and some other ones, that was where we were talking about it being a synergistic project. It was. I could be wrong. Once again, I'm happy if I'm wrong, but I made the motions. I recall that one.
So you support bringing more information back?
Well, they were supposed to bring it back. That motion was already made back in February.
Agreed, but I mean, we've all been through COVID. This whole thing's kind of been a mess. I get that. So
Right, I'm just
I guess
asking Mr. Nielsen for clarity on what he's wanting to accomplish and what GCAT is doing versus what we're doing, so it doesn't get watered down and further confusion about what we were doing versus what we're doing now. I don't understand it.
I'm guessing I've got 14 other members on this board would like an update that might help. But
okay, that's what we're saying the same thing, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bush, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just as it relates to kind of breaking up into some subcommittees right now, I don't know if that would be in addition to the regular meetings, so we would add meetings to the schedule, but my general thought is that as a board, we're really just starting to get, I think, our legs underneath us in terms of, cohesion and mission, and breaking apart to focus on specific areas where it might be helpful for a vetting perspective. I think that this format, at least for this member, is still too new to, and I personally would still benefit from the group discussion and the group perspective. And if it would be in addition to a regular meeting plus subcommittees, that presents kind of new issues. As many of us have other commitments, that would be a struggle to try to include additional meetings. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bush. Member Gomez, do you still have your hand up, or is this another conversation?
I have some comments.
Okay.
But I'll wait till everybody's done. I don't want to interrupt.
Is there anybody else that has any comments? I don't see any other hands but yours at the moment.
All right, so the one thing I had was a question for all of us for public health. I want to ask the city manager and Ms. Bowie, when we have our next meeting, Mr. Manager, in public, I have reached out to staff, but I'm going to come directly just ask you in public. Is there a way that you can provide, whether it be partitions or some kind of plexiglass or some kind of protections when we have these type of meetings? And I know we're still trying to figure out a setting with that has good Wi-Fi or whatever. Does the city have in place for a board this size the ability to have some kind of plexiglass and other protections in place?
The short answer is no. That's one of the reasons why I'm looking at potentially smaller groups when you do meet in person. We candidly, I'm not even sure what facility we would have that's going to be large enough to accommodate 15 people in a socially distant, physically distant format, with allowing the public to also enter and be there in a physically distant, safe manner. So it's one of the issues we're going to have to struggle with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We know you'll keep us safe. Personally, I'm in favor of a drum circle concept in Depot Park. Plenty of room, everybody can gather around. Member Blount, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Are we doing member comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, first I want to speak support on the Infinity Trail. I thought it was called Infinity Loop, but Infinity whatever. And I was one of those who some months ago, and well before COVID, asked for something to come back on that, and it seemed to kind of wither on the vine. So I'm glad the vine is speaking up. I also want to invite all of you to a virtual event on November 15th at 3 p.m. I don't know how well this shows up. This is an event about the history of lynching in Alachua County, and it's going to be November 15th at 3 p.m. And the link is all one word, heartwoodsoundstage.com/ and then every word is hyphenated, Heartwood Live Streaming Portal. So all one word, heartwoodsoundstage.com/ heartwood.com/hyphenated words Heartwood live streaming portal on November 15th at 3 p.m. And one of our esteemed members here, Evelyn Fox, is amongst the presenters on that program. Thank you.
Member Blount, could you take a picture of that on your phone and send it to staff so they can get it proper and
Yes,
send it
I
out
would
to
do that
us?
too.
Sounds quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, to the extent that my Luddite skills are up to it, I will try.
Staff, do you all know what can you get a copy of that or? All right,
Yeah,
Trisha's shaking her head. All right,
I'll
I'm
contact
good.
him and get a
Thank
copy
you.
of it. Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Could probably go to the Heartwood website and find it too, I would guess.
Probably.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right, other board member comment? I don't see any. So the last item we had was we moved our first agenda item of communications to the end.
Hi, good evening, Sarah Vidal. I'll try to make this brief, but there's a lot of information that we wanted to share regarding board attendance. It's been really rough and very unusual circumstances during COVID for trying to pull all this off. Major kudos to our team for making it happen. But it's been a big lift. And so, now we're looking at moving back to potentially in person. But the city clerk's office is trying to be very consistent across the board with all the advisory boards and the rules. And so I've been asked to kind of reiterate tonight what the expectations are for public meetings in case we go to another virtual meeting. But some of these rules actually still apply for in person as well. So I'm going to try to go through them quickly. So questions have arisen around what are the expectations for attendance and what defines attendance in the virtual realm. So the clerk's office helped us with the guidelines and rules. And so I'll be referencing 3 documents. One is your bylaws. One is the resolution 200146, which I think is the one that talks about supplemental rules that allow a virtual quorum. And then I'll refer to one Florida statute. So, and we can forward this information later for your information if you don't have it already. So the attendance policy in the bylaw states that members will be automatically removed if their attendance record is less than 50% of the most recent 6 meetings where it occurred. So an example of voting would be, for instance, the vote at the beginning where we adopt the agenda. So basically any meeting where there's quorum and the agenda is adopted counts as a voting meeting. So attendance means presence for more than half of the meeting, and the member is considered present if they are present in the virtual meeting via phone or video conferencing technology. So you have those options. Also, and this was new to us, but there's a voting requirement set in the Florida statutes that states that members must vote unless there's a possible conflict of interest. So if you are on the line, you're compelled to vote by your position. So in just trying to make sure the policies and expectations are clear for everyone, while there's no requirement, we would love if all members could have their cameras on when you're voting and during discussion, and feel free to turn them off if you need to step away or have a moment. There's a requirement for everyone who is present to vote or to inform the board chair in the meeting or the liaison before the meeting if there's a possible conflict of interest regarding one of the decisions. So if any board member is in danger of losing their seat due to attendance, as a courtesy, the liaison, that would be Tricia, will send a letter informing them of their attendance record so they have a chance to course correct. And then if an additional meeting is missed and the attendance record is lower than the required 50% out of the last 6 meetings, the clerk's office will actually send a notice of intent to remove a member, which will go to the city commission for approval. And at that meeting, if the member wishes to contest, they'll be able to do so at that time. So that's all I have. Hopefully that was clear. It was a lot of information that I tried to communicate quickly. But if there are any questions, I'm available, and Tricia probably knows way more about this than me. But we're available for questions.
Member Blount has a question.
Yes, it really has been different these last few months. Everybody's noticed, I'm sure, trying to be present in things. I'm trying not to be a Luddite, but I'm pretty technologically helpless almost. And I missed a lot of public meetings lately because of problems with the Zoom technology. In fact, it was just earlier today that I finally was able to get with someone expert enough to help me get something straightened out so I could be in this meeting. And I just wasn't able to afford expert help. And I happened to find somebody who was just willing to help me. So there's a lot more to be considered about people's attendance and intention to attend compared to the tradition we all know about showing up to a room and sitting in a chair. So I hope that's to be considered as well in the attendance issues, because sometimes the stuff just doesn't work and everybody doesn't know how to make it, how to flip that last second miracle to make something connect when it's not connected. Thank you.
Any other questions of members? I don't see any. Wait a minute. Our Ms. Bowie has a question or a statement?
I wanted to amplify the comments that were just made. Listen, this is a discussion that we've had as staff. One of the reasons why we thought it'd be worth you guys talking about it as a group tonight. We certainly recognize that the virtual environment has been challenging, not just technology, what counts as attendance. Obviously, like I have kids at home, some periods they can't, for whatever reason, they can't log on. They're absent in that class, they're back in the next class. We don't profess to know what the right answers are, but one of the things that we have been in talks with the clerk's office about is, should the virtual environment continue, how we can conform expectations across all of the advisory boards, because we don't want anyone to feel penalized or pressured when I really do think people are really doing the best that they can. So we just thought it was important enough for the group to know, because our staff has a responsibility to really be compliant and make sure that folks are attending by the current rules that are in place. Nobody contemplated that we would be in the situation that we're in. So, we're just hoping for a conversation and some honest feedback. If we can't, you guys are obviously feel free to reach out to the team, but we want to be thoughtful about how this works if we continue in a virtual environment, so people don't feel singled out or picked on.
Thank you for that affirmation. Member Turner Evans.
So while we're on this topic, my battery actually went down and it was fully charged when we started this meeting. So I actually missed a portion of what was discussed in terms of attendance. However, I will say that, I would appreciate some of the flexibility, as much as we can. We do start on time, right? We start at 5:30 and it's almost 9. So just trying to be respectful of our time and of staff's time and of, the manager and everyone else. So thank you for that. I hope that I can see this portion and kind of read about or listen to the replay of this portion of the meeting. I do think it's very important.
Thank you. Any other comments? I don't see any. Our next meeting is November 17th. At this time, it's returned to an in-person meeting, whether it's divided by plexiglass or in a circle in Depot Park. We'll let the city staff figure out where we're going to meet. Oh, there you go. Without objection, we'll adjourn.
All right.